Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everything in between, what's going on? Hope you guys are having a good evening. Hopefully the stream is working good. Looks like there might be a small error here. Let me see something. Let me know if you guys are seeing me right now. That'd be pretty cool. But there we go. Looks like it's working. So what's going on, everybody? Is everybody having a really great week this week? You guys having a good time watching all hell breaking loose? And looks like the stream is fine according to my sound check girl. Yeah, what's going on? Don't worry, Wyatt, I won't be too popular for much longer because I'm not covering specifically the stuff that made me famous anymore. What's up, Kelly Meadows? What's up, Atropa? Hey, Joe Biden's here. We're going to be talking about you a little bit, probably. Almanac 13 says, sup, smoke time. You kind of missed that, there's a lot more hours left in the day. Are we going just by like midnight to midnight, or are we going like wake up to sleep time, I don't usually go by the clock. I go by when I'm awake for. So, yeah. So what's on everybody's mind tonight? Have you guys been watching the world? Are you guys stoked to see the Great Awakening continue? Are you guys having a good time watching the revelations of history coming to pass? Are you guys enjoying the cat getting out of the bag, or are you getting ready to be vindicated, even if it means your doom? Sometimes if nothing else, the shit that's going on is vindicating, even if it's gonna kill you, right? At least you get to say, I was right, motherfuckers. I was right. And it is getting more and more like that. I'm noticing a lot less pushback from people just in general, when you try to, now when you try to open their eyes to what's going on, there's a lot less pushback. We'll just put it that way. People are not as sure of themselves. They're realizing something's not right. And that's because it's not. We have been living in an artificial bullshit pile all of our lives, every single one of us. Now, a little bit of deception in society is normal. A little bit of deception from the powers that be is expected. It's nothing new. It's part of ruling or leading or organizing a civilization. There needs to be some deception and, little manipulation here and there, because human beings, by and large, a lot of us are competent and intelligent and reasonable. Reasonableness is really the key here. It's really about reasonableness. So a lot of people are very reasonable, but there's a lot that are not. And so the powers that be, if we're giving them all the, whatchamacallit, if we're giving them, I can't think of the word, when you're giving someone the benefit of the doubt, when you're giving them the benefit of the doubt, you can say, yeah, to a certain degree, you gotta manipulate a little bit to keep the dummies, the zombies, the people that are not, really reasonable from killing everybody else or being a burden to everybody else. So to make a functional society that's compassionate and humane, to some degree, you've got to present a facade of normalcy, even when it's not. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. Thank you. Yeah, so you got to do things to keep the wheels on the wagon. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to do things to keep the wheels on the wagon. And I think most reasonable people understand that. But the average zombie, I hate to dehumanize them like that, but let's be honest, right? You can be compassionate towards a zombie, but a lot of these people running around they're worse than blind. They're literally zombies in their minds. They're effectively zombies. Their brains, they've been lobotomized by propaganda and the system itself. They don't live in a natural world. None of us really do anymore, but there's natural and there's landscaped, shall we say, which is what we thought we lived in. Most of us thought we lived in more of a landscaped society. No, it's turning out this is more like the Matrix or a prison. that they've set up for everybody. And as that facade of being a landscaped, you know, natural world starts to fall away, as people start to realize that it's not just a matter of incompetent corruption. You know, there's corruption. Usually when I think of the word corruption, I think of people who are just incompetent, covering their ass and trying to make what they can. In other words, there's a certain kind of boys will be boys mentality towards regular corruption. You know, you expect a little bit of greed, a little bit of debauchery. You expect that. That's not at issue. If it was just mundane corruption, we wouldn't be here. No, we're talking about something that has been planned, positioned. We're talking about something that is very soon. People like me saying this, there's a lot of us saying this. Have you noticed that? I kept this down. I kept this tight for years when I first started doing content creation. This was not what I wanted to do everything based on. I tried and I got disgusted and I stopped. It was like, you know, that's why my channel is like 2013 or 14. I started with a few, you know, opinion videos here and there. And I said, you know what, no, screw it. I'm going to do the magic thing. If you're wondering why my channel is dying, part of the reason is because I'm talking about things people don't want to hear about. They want me to be an entertainer. And in a great degree I am. They want me to validate their mythology. They want me to validate their insanity, to be honest. They want me to tell them that there's a hell with demons in it that love them and will do their bidding if they put some fucking incense on their altar. That supposedly these beings that are capable of destroying armies with the wink of an eye will fall down and fall all over themselves to do what they want. If you just go into your closet, light a little bit of incense and say a few words over an altar. No, Wyatt, it was only 40 new ones, dude. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the positivity. It's only like 40 ones. I keep track of it too. It used to be 250 a month back before I even had 2,000 subscribers. It was and it's not just subscribers. You need view hours. And part of that's my fault because I am not creating regular content anymore. I've just been mostly doing live streams lately. Because I don't feel like doing the occult videos because, to be brutally honest, I'm spending a lot of time writing or trying to write. I've been trying to get this new theory on paper presented in a way that can be a foundation for something. And with everything that's going on, distracting me and my own attachments to it, you know, it's all me, guys. I can't blame the world, even though the world is a factor. It's me. I could tune it out and just write. I could tune it out and just focus. That would probably make me happier. But I am blessed with the sight, you could say. I see what others don't. Not everything. I learned to be, trust me, but I see better than most. And maybe it's anxiety. But I also know that I need to be informed, and so does everybody else. You know, it's infuriating when you know what's going on and when I say I know what's going on, I don't mean like I really know. No one really knows. Unless you're like deep on the inside, unless you're like Trump, Elon, Biden, unless you're one of these characters, you don't know what's going on. What's up, Z? You don't know what's really going on. You know what they're letting you see. You know what they're letting you see, and what they're letting you see is a shit show. And it's about to get so much worse. I've been going and telling people that I care about that if you've been waiting for an excuse or a reason or a time to stock up on some basics so that you can literally lay low if you're in a reasonably safe area, just so you don't have to leave the house unless you want to for like a month or two. You know what I mean? If shit hits the fan, if there's a major economic collapse or downturn and there's riots, and imagine 2020 happens again now this summer, the equivalent. But it's not like race riots and COVID insanity. Imagine it's the dollar collapses, or there's a major recession, people lose business, or any of that kind of stuff. And there's also rioting, and there's also everything. What if economically, let's say, you have to understand, like, I'm not a doom and gloom person. I'm a realist when it comes to this stuff. Doom and gloom would be there's no hope, we're going to get invaded, China's coming, the southern border is open, they're going to come across, they're going to get us with that, because half of them are military age now, and there's 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 Chinese people coming across the border, and it's like, what is this? Like, there's a line, isn't there, between like refugee and people who just want to immigrate here and millions of military-aged people? I'm not trying to say all of them or anything like that. You have little girls with 67 different strains of DNA in their body. Little 8-year-old fucking girls with 67 strains of other people's DNA in their body, being trafficked. And I'm a bigot and a racist for thinking that that is wrong to enable. You want to have a border that lets everybody in? Even if that's the case, this ain't the fucking Underground Railroad. This is serious. That's why I'm not talking about things that are not relevant. I talk about magic and spirituality because that is the foundation. But I'm not going to have my head in the clouds while what's happening is happening. Fences make great neighbors. Exactly, mate. Exactly. I sell trees to people all the time at my part-time job for that reason. It really is important to have trees. Trees and fences. Good screen trees. Get like lots of arborvitaes and shit like that. And wall off your property. Don't worry, Wyatt. I'll be talking about other stuff tonight, but I'm talking about it because I feel the winds changing. Do you? You guys feel the winds changing? What's up, Charles? Wyatt brought you here. Uh-oh. Wyatt, are you bringing what are you bringing here? What's going on, Charles? Nice to meet you. I got my finger in the air and I'm feeling the winds changing. If you're paying attention, you notice that the very slow drip of stuff that's been coming out has been becoming a more and more steady rain. It's starting to rain, guys. You ever hear that funny little thing? Imagine you're the third monkey on the ramp of the ark and it's starting to rain. It's starting to rain. Can you feel it? There's a lot of people, especially in America, who've never had to deal with the kind of societal bullshit that's coming. You know, people who come from South and Central America, third world, second world, whatever you think that is, people come from countries that don't have it as well as us. They know what's going on. They see it very clearly. Other countries look at us and they go, yep. Yeah, Abba. How many wars at once? Good question. Doesn't it say in the Bible there will be wars and rumors of wars? They're following that fucker like a script. And it's got all the Christians thinking that Jesus is coming any day, and he's not. Not like that. Christ will return. Jesus, that motherfucker's dead. Christ will return. Even as a left-hand path Luciferian type, maybe even especially as a Luciferian, I know that Christ, the archetype, the Luciferian Christ archetype, which is what it always was, the Promethean archetype, will return. The Christ consciousness, the Christ type, the Christ archetype will return. But it ain't going to come back as a man, one person. It's the age of Aquarius, guys. It's the awakening. Well, Jay, if Jesus really does float out of the sky, then I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do. And I'm going to have to talk to that motherfucker and see what's up. And I maintain that if the God of the Bible is the God we're talking about, that abusive, narcissistic, favorite playing motherfucker, if that's God, nah, I reject it. So I don't think it's that God, by the way. I don't do that to be edgy. I do that with confidence. If that is God, if God is anything like the God in the Bible, I want nothing to do with that fucker. Just like what's his name from Pitch Black. I absolutely do believe in God, and I absolutely hate the fucker. If that's God, oh hell no. I know that the fundy God is not God. I know that with every fiber of my being. I know that in the Gnostic sense. I truly know that's not God. So I'm not scared. And if I'm wrong, then I'll take my fucking lumps. I will literally take my fucking lumps. Don't care. So all these people saying it's revelation, watch them closely. Are they doing anything? Or are they bending over and saying, come Lord, save us? Get up off your ass. Let me clue you guys in on the real Lucifer a little bit. I see you guys talking about Lucifer a little bit. And I want to get to that question. Somebody asked a question. My wife pointed out. Oh, Patchy gave me a chat. What's up, Patchy? He said, what I missed? Not much, man. You only just got here. I DM'd the question. Did you? Okay. I'm scrolling up to find it again. And I know what it was. Yeah, there it is. Have you ever heard about the so-called conspiracy of the ancient civilization of Tartaria? If so, what are your thoughts on it? It sounds familiar, but I don't know. I don't know that much about it. I've only gotten a little bit into some of the lost civilization stuff over the last year or so. Thank you, Patchy. He says, watch it be a giant sock puppet living on the moon that comes back instead of God. Guys, I want to be clear. I do believe in divinity. I do believe in God. And I don't believe D.H. Thorne is God. I don't think Wyatt is God. I think all of these things are God. It's a pantheistic perspective. It's a non-dual pantheistic perspective. God is everything, and you are that. You're not separate from it, and you're not even a little part of it. D.H. Thorne is a little part of it, but that consciousness is it. That is God. Consciousness is that you can't divide consciousness. It is whole. And it has no edges and no boundary. And that consciousness is the divine. And it's in everyone and probably everything. So what is Lucifer? Well, I prefer a sort of Gnostic understanding of Lucifer. Not that I'm a Gnostic specifically, at least not in the dualistic sense. I am a Gnostic in the non-dual sense. I think that Gnosticism is a wonderful metaphor. It's a great way to, like, basically the Matrix, but, you know, the Matrix is Gnosticism updated. It's like Gnosticism 2, 3, 4.0 or something. Slim Lewis says, so you cannot become a living God? Is that what you're saying? You sound very dejected. You do recognize that, no offense to EA, but you do recognize that that's a marketing gimmick, right? Just want to be sure. No offense to EA. He knows how I roll. He knows how I speak. That's a marketing gimmick. To be a living God is to recognize that you are God. That's it. You don't become a fucking God. You awaken to the divine in the self. That's what it means. Gnosis. Apotheosis. But apotheosis is a realism. I know you know, Slim. I'm not. I shouldn't have. Sorry if I was like if I was implying you were negative. I just got to be sure. No. It's cool. Sorry, Slim. You've been here a while. But I want to be clear. Love EA like a brother, but I will tell him to his face. To become a living God is to recognize that thou art. Tatvamasi. It is to climb the tree of life and recognize the Ein Sof as the self. The true self. It is to also know the cliff off. It is to realize that you're not on a cycle of samsara. You're watching it. Thank you, Jason. You haven't seen nothing yet. I am going to be, at some point in the future, you know, I consider that book kind of like out of date, if that makes sense. It's fine. Like, there's plenty in there in Maelstrom that's good, and I still stand by most of it. But there's ways I would have done it differently, is all I'm saying. Like, it's sort of like, you know, an artist often doesn't like their work. And when I look at that, that was from 2018. Right? And 2019, I guess 2018. And is when I started writing it. And then what ended up happening is, like, I was trying to create a, not a Bible, but I was trying to create a book. All right, I was trying to create a book that's, here we go. Sometimes I look through other books not to necessarily learn what's best, but there you go. I was sort of trying to recreate something like this. A book that had its own perspective on magic in it, that was sort of like this, that has the fundamentals for everything. And there's quite a lot in there that I still stand by, but there's so much more that I know now, and there's so many things that I have sort of decided that I do differently now. And so Maelstrom is no longer the state of the art of what I would teach you. I would still say there's a lot in there that's good, though. Like the methodology section, really good. I like most of that. I would change some of it, but a lot of that would stay. Charles says, off-topic question, what are shadow people? Are they basically egregores that derive from negative energy? I heard that's your specialty. So yes, shadow people is something I'm very well known for, although I don't know if I guess it is my special. It's not my specialty, but it's definitely something that people associate with me. And shadow people, they are the latest manifestation, incarnation, mask for the shadow, the archetype of the human shadow, which has evolved in our culture. It comes through as devils and what Christians call demons, even though I prefer to use the word demon more like daemon, like tutelary spirit that teaches. That's how I've always treated them, you know, or fetches, you know, familiars. But here's the thing, like what spirits are, you kind of have to like, most people that study this stuff do not have a metaphysical foundation to work from. And so they believe a superstitious set of ideas about them. You'll describe them as egregores. Do you know what egregores are? I mean, you might, but I mean, do you might have heard what they are. Do you really know what they are? Or is it just a word and a couple of ideas that you know? You know what I'm saying? Do you have a Gnostic knowledge of what an egregore is? Or is it just a word you heard that is used to describe things? Every spiritual entity, every soul is the Atman. And that Atman is individuated through avidya or agnosis. It is individuated because the divine spotlights its mind, highlighting only one soul at a time. But that's not true because time isn't real, by the way. So it does this to all souls at the same time. It is the same divine being watching each soul and having a subjective temporal incarnate experience or separate avatar experience of all of it at the same time. So every deity, every demon, every god, every spirit, every thought form, even to some extent, has conscious awareness. And if it doesn't have conscious awareness, it still has awareness. See, awareness is irreducible. Awareness is fundamental to reality. Anyone who says it's not doesn't know what they're talking about. I don't care if they're scientists or what. Awareness in some form is fundamental to that, to the monad, to the source, to the 0 point reality, whatever you want to call it, to God, whatever the fuck that is to you. Consciousness and awareness. So consciousness is awareness, aware of being aware. That's what consciousness fundamentally is. Consciousness is recursive awareness. I am aware that I am aware that I am aware of something. It's a 3. Everything that has to do with incarnate or experiential simulacrum reality requires a 3. The myriad monadin, yes. Pretty sure I understand what you're saying. I'm pretty sure I agree with that, yes. The myriad of monads, yes. There are so many different kinds of monad. The soul is a monad. The individualized soul is like a monad, but it's a microcosmic monad that is within a macrocosmic whole, and they're all one. There's no separation between them. Plants are aware. This is aware. You know it's aware because it responds. You see, awareness and consciousness are often conflated. Consciousness is awareness aware of itself being aware. That's what consciousness is. So consciousness is really just awareness in a recursive sense. It's like an echo. Consciousness is like an echo of awareness. And awareness is absolutely fundamental to existence. This isn't existence. This is what existence looks like. Existence is behind this. This solid physical, this is what existence manifests as. Reality is invisible. It's in the closest that material scientists get to is when they say the information hypothesis, the information universe, a holographic principle, the eternalist model. Information. What's information? True primordial elemental information is nothing you can rationalize. True information, pure information looks like nothing. That information manifests as this. And the soul is just a nexus of information. It's a microcosmic, monadic reflection of the whole. It's a drop of dew on Indra's web, reflecting the whole thing. And any individuated thing has soul to it. Doesn't necessarily mean it has a monadic soul. Doesn't necessarily mean it has a conscious soul. So there's soul and there's consciousness and there's awareness that is in it. So a shadow person is just the latest incarnation in human culture of ancient devils. So what is that? Well, devils, demons in the Christian mind, are always those parts of ourselves that we are the most ashamed of, both as individuals and as a society. Those things that we deny, that we're scared of, that we're ashamed of, the things that we keep hidden. We put them in the abyss. We don't like to admit. But the more you do that, the more they take on a life of their own. Notice a shadow. Why do we call them a shadow? Well, shadows aren't things. If you know your it's not even just metaphysics, it's just regular rationality. Shadows aren't things. Shadows are a privation, a deprivation, a lacking of something. Shadows are not illuminated. They're a part of reality that is not illuminated. So what is a shadow person? It is a part of the psycho-spiritual self that is not illuminated by your mind. You're not aware consciously of it. You're aware of it, but you're not consciously aware of it. You don't acknowledge it. And in the greater civilization, in the collective conscious, in the collective soul of the world, of the human race, there's shadows there too. And when they get ignored, and when they get darkened, when the less light shines upon them, the more cold and the more real and reified they can become, until, like any other egregore, they can actually manifest to some form of detection. In really rare cases, I believe that they manifest in ways that can be caught on camera. Not provably, but it'll leave you going, is that a ghost? What is that? And shadow beings, shadow people appear sometimes not as shadow. Their appearance is not the point. I use the appearance of the shadow. I've seen them as shadowy beings, but that is also allegory or metaphor or something like that. It's meant to reveal to you their nature. It's not that they all, like, a shadow person isn't a shadow person because they look like a shadow. That's just how the urban myth version of them appears. Shadow people, their essence is the same as every demon and devil in Western civilization. It's no different. Every demon and devil in Western civilization is a manifestation of the shadow. And it is a way for that culture to acknowledge it But instead of integrating, they make war with it. They use it as a scapegoat. Every devil is a scapegoat. They blame them for what they're doing. That's right, Joke Biden, you damn what. You're not even a demon, dude. You're a puppet. What kind of demon is a puppet? By the way, I don't know who's running Joke Biden's account, but you're cool, my friend. You're cool. I love this kind of shit. Please keep coming here. Joke Biden's cool. I fucking love those. I guess they're made by AI. When they have, there's a channel I watch where he has like Joe Biden, Trump, and Obama, and usually a fourth person is a guest, and they'll play D&D and they'll play video games like Minecraft and shit. And it'll, you know, fucking Trump is just picking on Biden the whole time. Biden's just a like total straight dork and like a dumb dork, and Obama is like a straight man. It's fucking hysterical. I hate Biden and Obama, and I wish they were like that, dude. It's so like, it takes a load off. You know what I mean? Like this is what we need right now. This is the satire we need right now. Can't we all come together on these? I think everybody who doesn't have a stick up their ass, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, commie, I think everybody could come together and watch those videos and would find something hilarious. Yeah, why? And a lot of people are doing them now. I think I saw like 10 channels doing, and they all have the same voice and you know, they must all be using the same AI shit. It's fucking great, dude. I love it. I love it when they show Trump like with the Warhammer shit, and you know, he's always playing like this fucking it's just great, man. It's just fucking great. Oh god, it's good. Yes, I saw that one too, Charles. I'm pretty sure I did. If not, I saw one with the same basic shtick. Oh my god, it was fucking great. There's one with like Ben Shapiro. I fucking hate Ben Shapiro, which to some people is like, you hate Ben Shapiro? I thought you liked Trump. It's like, well, I'm not saying I love Trump or anything, but no, I'm not a conservative. I don't like tradcons. I think they're obnoxious. Fucking elf little motherfucker, leprechaun. Yes, Charles, in a manner of speaking, you could call them that, but don't reduce them to that. One of the things that I have learned through my esoteric studies and practices is that generally we as incarnate beings have everything backwards. We think because we're egoistic beings that we're creating these things as individuals. We think that D.H. Thorne created that shadow person out of his mind, and that's an egregore, and boom. The reality is the information is eternal and is present as the divine itself. And as the divine explores itself, it manifests as these things. But part of that is it's focusing its conscious awareness, its attention on I'm going to use was it Hegel or Kant? I think it was Kant. Somebody used the word monad, not just Plotinus and all that, but they referred to them as monads. So the divine focuses its awareness on the singular monad. It's not really singular, but the individuated monad of our individualized souls. That creates a projection outwards that looks like an externalized world, but really we're seeing this, again, it's not separate from the whole, but this monad, this individualized monad in relationship to the whole. So it's a microcosmic reflection, like a hologram or a fractal or something with self-symmetry. It is a reflection of the whole, as above, so below, right? So that reflection looks like the universe. In a sense, the highest reality is cosmic solipsism. And individual existence is subjective and solipsistic, but it's not solipsistic, because everything you're experiencing that you think of as outside is really in you, the greater you, and it manifests to look like it's outside of you. So when I'm talking to you guys on here, I'm not just talking to my imagination. That would be solipsism. I'm talking, though, to a part of my greater self that is reflected in my personal subjective reality. In other words, whatever your reality is, it bleeds into my subjective one. And it's all one reality. It's all one divine being having individualized experiences of itself. But it's not separate. It's not truly disconnected. It's not truly separate. Wyatt and I are the same being experiencing itself from the perspective of Thorne and Wyatt. But we're both the same being. This is not something you come to or arrive at intellectually. You only learn to describe it via intellect. The knowledge of it is a Gnostic knowledge. You cannot. So Wyatt, when you asked before, how do we know we're right? Because it's not about it is not pure logic that leads you here. Logic, the use of logic when it comes to spiritual, metaphysical realization is in negation, contemplation via negativa. So via negativa contemplation, you have to use your intellect to deconstruct, not construct. You have to deconstruct your illusions until you no longer have a rational leg to stand on. And you're left with the great whatever, the great abyss, the great formlessness that is the divine. Once you've got nothing that you can hold on to anymore as it, and your mind is just shook, silent by being unable to explain or describe. When all that remains is pure being with no explanation, then you can begin to reassemble. Once you've hit that gnosis of, holy shit, everything that is in consciousness. Everything is in consciousness, not the other way around. Consciousness isn't something made by the brain. The brain's essentially something that appears in consciousness. What the brain really is, I have no idea. All I know is that consciousness, for sure, is 100% all that is for me. And it is the same for everyone, if you're being honest. If you do the work, if you do the practices, all that exists, for sure, because everything else can be wiped away, consciousness can't. And people say, well, what about when I'm unconscious? Are you, though? Are you? Can you remember a time that you weren't conscious? No. If anything, you forget things, but you don't have an experience that's not consciousness. Follow me? You're always conscious. Even before you were born, you just don't remember it because it's not part of this current iteration of this monad that you are. Those memories are no longer here. They're built into the soul of what you are. It's sort of like how information can never be destroyed or created. It can only change form or be, ignored, basically. So that memory information is still a part of you. It's just you're not accessing it right now. You're not conscious of it right now. And part of what we do as magicians and mystics is try to touch that a little bit. When you get just a little teeny taste of that memory that's beyond your current self, that information, that reality beyond it, just even that little teeny little taste, that little French kiss, little bit that you get, it's enough to blow your whole fucking mind out of the water. It'll make you insane really quick if you're not well grounded, if you don't have a good metaphysical mentality. Just that little tiny little bit of stuff that I've seen or experienced or am aware of or conscious of when I do certain practices is enough to give me complete and utter peace. In a way, it's a curse to know for sure, because you're kind of robbed of some of the... It's kind of like you're robbed of some of the immersion. In other words, enlightenment's a little bit like realizing you're playing a game so you don't take it so seriously after a while. Like, imagine Imagine you were born into a VR video game like the Matrix movies. You take it very seriously, but the moment you realize it's not real in the way you think it is, because it's real, it's just not real the way you think it is. That's an important distinction, by the way. When people hear what I'm saying, they think, so you think reality's not real? Why don't you go walk into traffic? No, that's not what I mean. I'm saying what you see is representation of reality, but it's not reality. When you realize that this is a very vague symbolic reality, you don't take it as seriously when you transcend the self a few times, when you have ego death, when you realize, when you go on a far enough chemonastic trip or whatever the hell your method is, transcendental meditation, whatever. When you go far enough and ego's gone, you have no awareness of yourself. In other words, as a self, as an individual separate self, when you're just experiencing and you realize that that this idea of D.H. Thorne is just an idea in your mind. It's not even really real the way you think it is. There's a source for it. See, that's the thing people get confused. People think, well, Thorne's saying there's no D.H. Thorne, but I'm talking to him right now. This is absurd. There's the essence, the soul, the information. Yes. But that information actually has no meaning until it's interacted with by consciousness. It's like I'm going to use the book analogy again for those of you who haven't heard that one in a while. When you open up a book, it's just ink blobs on the page. They don't mean anything. Do you guys think that hey guys, is this the letter M or is it just a bunch of ink? It's only a letter M to us because we've been taught that that's what an M looks like. An M is an idea. And that idea doesn't have to go with an M. That M could be assigned to any shape. It doesn't have, so that's not even an M. That's just a shape we've agreed to call M. And that shape M, when put with these other shapes, means modern magic. And that means something to us. But that is not modern magic. That's not what that is. That's just ink. It's information. Raw information doesn't mean anything. Absolute primordial raw information doesn't mean anything by itself. It only makes sense or means something in relationship to other information. The number one has no meaning until there's another number one next to it. Now this can be one and this can be another one, and together they're two. Oh wait, that's a new one, isn't it? In other words, information is meaningless unless it has its own information to have a relationship to. The Kybalion is okay, Wyatt. It's a great beginner book. Great beginner book. But it's not really Hermeticism, and it gets a few things off. The guy who wrote it was a mentalist. I've read it too. I love some of the words in it because he's very close. But it's part of what makes me be a detractor from the Kybalion, not because it's wrong, but because it falsely claims to be the book of Hermeticism. It's not. It is clearly inspired and is in the Hermetic sort of tradition. It's like a copycat Hermeticism. It's not completely wrong, but don't treat that, use it as a good point of view, but don't make it your gospel. The as above, so below is not Kybalion. As above, so below is from the original Hermetica. I tell you truly and most true, that which is above is exactly like that which is below. I'm paraphrasing, but I got it pretty close. That's the first two sentences of the real Hermetic tradition. The Kybalion is not that. The Kybalion takes that and runs away with it through a mentalist perspective, which is not bad, but it's not it. It's sort of a copycat. The guy was brilliant, and the things that they wrote were good, and a lot of it is applicable. And it's a good starting point for a lot of magicians because it's difficult to penetrate the hard shit without it. Believe it or not, it's actually a decent primer for a lot of people because it's hard to penetrate some of these other traditions without a primer like that. Alan Watts was my primer. Because of Alan Watts, I was better able to understand what I was experiencing when I was going through gnosis. I was better able to understand what other traditions are saying. and to see them all as having a valid perspective of the same truth. There's only one truth, and there's a whole bunch of ways of describing it, and all of them have validity in that way. So long as their point is not to tell you what it is, but to point you towards it, it's fine. So like, I know people that when they're talking about the Kabbalah, the tree of life, they take it literally. Instead of seeing it as a thought form glyph that humanity is created to help us relate to the unrelatable, they take it as literal. Like there's these literal dimensions that have these names that are presided over by these. In other words, they turn it into religion and they're dumb. No offense, but they're dumb. Especially when they start to get dogmatic about it, they go beyond dumb and they become zombified. Really stupid to do. There are better ways and there are worse ways to point, but what makes it better or worse is subjective. For a lot of people in Western culture, up until at least the last 30 or 40 years, the Kabbalah was probably the best. Hermeticism was good. Kabbalion was decent. Those are all decent Western traditions that point at the same thing that is being pointed at by most of Hinduism and Eastern esoteric mysticism, Taoism, Zen. They're all pointing at that same thing. We're all pointing at the same truth, and we agree on that central point. It's just how it manifests for us all can be a little different. And we need our own personal way. One of the good things about sort of cutting my teeth on a more Zen perspective like Alan Watts is I don't take the literature that seriously. I don't take the dogmas that literally. Atropa, that's an excellent book, by the way. That I'm glad that's my first real introduction to Kabbalah is the one by Dion Fortune. I gotta say, at first I wasn't so sure. The first couple chapters I was like, I don't know, but I recognized a very similar intellect. You know, I gotta say that I would probably have a great time hanging out with Dion Fortune. I bet you that she and I would have talked for hours. It probably would have been a hoot, because she and I think we have a very similar mentality. At least from her writing, it seems so. She writes very eloquently. Her thoughts are very deep. She is not just reciting shit she's heard. She puts it into proper context. Beautiful. I'm just reading you guys' comments, seeing if there's anything to respond to. No, Charles, I've never heard of that person. They said, have you ever read anything by Sorceress Cagliostro? I've been getting into some of her stuff lately. No, if you, well, you don't know, but you should know that I am not a heavy reader when it comes to other people's mystical opinions. I have a philosophy that tells me not to over-research. It's not that I'm so arrogant that I think everyone's wrong. It's that the way I operate, I prefer to be given a trail of breadcrumbs and figure it out on my own, and then have it validated by finding out that this is something a lot of other people know. I am constantly amazed and shocked. Every time I turn around, there's someone out there that has realized stuff I already have thought I made up. You know, it's like they say, nothing new or original exists. Everything is just a rehashing of something somebody else come up with. That is completely true. But to see it all the time is both frustrating, but also incredibly validating. Do you have an idea what it's like to formulate an idea, a complete diagram or model of the way consciousness manifests reality, and then find out that an ancient pre-Socratic philosopher had a very similar idea that I was unaware of. You know what that's like? One of the greats of antiquity to have a very similar, not the same, but in line with everything, then to find in Hinduism almost the same things, and so on and so forth. To find these things echoing, and to know that you're not just crazy. In other words, it means, so if my awareness of the divine is accurate, then I should, without having to be taught, I should, if my intellect is decent, I should be able to come up with a basic way of describing reality that should resonate with all these other masters. So should you, at least if your intellect is up to snuff. You don't have to have 140 IQ. You just have to be not completely dumb. You have to be a little bit intuitive. And just by understanding the center, the non-dual the divine, just by having gnosis of it, true gnosis of it, not informed gnosis, true, direct, to transcend reality, hit the deepest states of gnosis. When you get those, you don't get a whole bunch of information. You don't get a whole bunch of facts and details. It's not like God steps out behind a cloud and draws you a picture of what reality looks like. It literally is realizing that all of this that you see is bullshit and is a projection of something that you can't see. And that thing is non-dual. There's no separation. When you hit that full gnosis, bong, and you're gone, you didn't go anywhere though. The universe went away. You follow? Like, you're not leaving the universe. The universe is being turned off. Like the lights are being shut off. And you're there in the whole totality, and it looks like nothing because it's everything all at once. And you get this big... There's no self, there's no other, there's no individual, there's no name, there's no this. It's just, you're just conscious of existing, of being, of pure nothing, no thing. It's just consciousness, conscious of being conscious. Not quite, Patrick. That's a type of gnosis. That's a lower mystical gnosis is not about information. It's not about suddenly knowing a detail. It is a total revelation. It is just a total release of delusion. Again, it's like everything shuts off and it's just you. Like Gar just said, no props, no lights, no costume. Great way to put it. The whole stage is empty. Even the stage is gone, but you're still there. You're still there. Like when you go in a closet, turn all the lights out and you're still there, but you can't see anything. But now imagine the black goes away. Imagine all the sound goes away. Imagine everything goes away except this sense of being. Not a feeling like you feel your body, a sense of existing in a great nothing. No thing, no hyphen thing, not nothing, just no hyphen thing. Just pure being without any features. And knowing that that being contains everything, every feature that you know is an infinitesimal, because it's space and time don't exist in this place. It's an infinitesimal part of the total essence of the nothing. See, language can't comprehend. You can't speak this. You can only know it. You can only be like, boof, oh, shit, I get it. Because it's not in your head. It has nothing to do with your brain or your ability to intellectualize. That there is no intellect capable of intellectualizing what I'm describing. It's not because humans are too dumb. It's because there's even if you filled an entire universe with a description of it, it would be too small. You can't make a box that contains itself. A box can only contain something inferior to it. Because the outside of the box will always be outside of the box, which necessitates an outside. So your box can't have an outside edge. It can only have an inside edge, and no such thing can exist that way. It is said in Hinduism to think of it as if you are an ever-expanding infinity, and so you can never see the edge of yourself. You don't have an edge. There's no box around what you are. This is why when people say, well, the universe must be finite, otherwise it's infinite, and we can't do that. Sorry, but the reality is infinity loses meaning here too. Because infinity itself is an idea that has a structure. It has a beginning and an end, even though that end is infinitely in the future. It doesn't even have that. Even the concept of infinity is inferior to the one, the whole, the Brahman, the Jiva Brahma, whatever you want to call it, the highest high. Most high is not enough. You have to go higher than that. You have to go higher than the highest. Infinity is still an infinitesimal nothing compared to that. So if you say the divine is infinite, that don't fit. The divine is boundless. It is timeless. It is formless. But it inspires form, time, space, existence. Whew. I'm feeling it tonight, guys. You feeling it? Jose asks, Thorne, how often do you astral project? Part of the problem with astral projection is what technically constitutes astral projection to you. I think that there's a lot of New Age woo that has been inserted into the astral project conversation. And let's not forget to describe it as astral is a recent phenomenon in occult dialogue. It wouldn't have been called that originally. Soul travel may be a little better. But what is it? Well, you're doing it right now, if you understand things a little bit better. But if we're talking about the YouTube explanation, if you go and you Google or YouTube astral projection, you're going to get a whole bunch of flaky New Age hippy dippy things about it. Some of it works. Not saying it doesn't. But a lot of it is New Age wooery. What is going on really depends on how you define it. If you mean the sense of leaving your body and flying around the real world, I have certain reservations for that because I've known people who claim to be able to do that. And I've done things like it, but it's not a one-for-one mirror of the world as you see it. Some parts are, but some parts are not. They'll say like, oh, I can travel to your house and see in your house. Oh, you can. What's in my closet? I won't be any more specific than that. What's in my closet? I put something there that's unusual. What is it? Now, I am not a dick. I don't even require that they be exact. I can tell because it's sort of like remote viewing. If you've ever practiced real remote viewing, which I'm starting to, and I actually got it the first time I tried it, by the way. It's not hard. Anybody can do it. I'm telling you right now, anyone can do this. The hardest part is being intuitive, or I should say spontaneous enough. But you will not see a specific, you will see representational. You will see symbolic. You will see shit like that. And you don't even have to do that. And even calling it remote viewing is kind of off. There's a guy who talks about this, and I agree with them. Instead of calling it remote viewing, you should call it remote perception. Because it's not about what you see. It's not like you leave your body, go there and see it with your spiritual eyes. It's not like that at all. That's Hollywood. The reality is you just have knowledge of it. You just have mysterious perception of it. And it will come out spontaneously and intuitively. It's not something you plan. It's not something you have. If you try to think about it, you're going to fuck up. You literally have to just start writing words down, drawing little pictures and shit. You literally just have to just go buck wild and not try to do it with your mind at all. In some ways, it's better if you're a little distracted, in fact, so that you're not actually thinking about it. Like if you can't clear your mind, if you haven't developed that ability, you haven't practiced meditation, then you need to distract yourself a little bit. Keep your eyes open. Don't read anything or anything like that. Don't watch TV. I mean, you could do it while watching TV, but that might not really be a good idea. You need, think of it this way. Your mind is like a spotlight. And your mind is fixated on this brain. And this brain is in relationship to everything else in reality. And so that brain has subtle little parts of it that you're conscious of that are in relationship to things you can't imagine. And so those things trigger realizations in your mind when the mind is properly highlighting the brain in the right way. And so you pick up on subtle things, and it's your divinity. This isn't a trick. This is your divinity intuitively knowing what it is you're looking for. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the one I practiced so far, there's no clue whatsoever what you're looking for. It is literally, they give you a bunch of random numbers to write down. And based off of those numbers, which don't mean anything, they're just numbers that have been connected to a picture in an envelope. Based on those numbers, you take those numbers and then you read those numbers and you think about those numbers. You focus on those numbers. You use those numbers like a bloodhound. Just the numbers. That's all you want. This is just one method, by the way. And then you start scribbling next to those numbers, and you just scribble. Don't worry about what they look like. Don't try to make them look like anything. You can even just look away and just do like automatic writing, and just do a little, nothing big. You're not making a picture. You're literally just. Don't even worry about what they look like. Don't even worry about if they match each other. Don't try to just scribble. Mindlessly scribble while you're fixated on those numbers. Then once you've done that, do that a couple times if you have to really get in the zone. Once you're in that zone, just start writing the first words and things that come to your mind. And don't worry about if they make sense. Don't worry about how they relate to each other. Literally just. Doesn't matter what the words are. Treat it like a game of bingo when you're hearing random numbers come up. Don't worry about where they're coming from. Don't worry about if they make sense. Don't worry about how they would fit together. Just take those things, write them down. Maybe draw a little picture, shapes, just big shapes. Draw circles, squares. If you feel like suddenly like you just want to do a mountaintop or something, whatever it is. And when I did it, I got it right. Almost every word I wrote was directly. So out of the 10 words I wrote, 8 of them were direct hits with the picture. And the little scribbles I drew, the little doodles I drew, not the ones next to the numbers, but the little doodles I drew, 2 of them were perfectly appropriate. One of them was, I didn't quite understand what it was referencing. Maybe there's something in the picture I didn't see, or from the angle I can't see. But I got the place right. I would never have gotten the name of it because I'm not that good. But I got the place right. I got enough details that if you were asking me to remote view what's in your closet, a lot of it would have been helpful. Doesn't mean I can see in your closet. It just means there's an echo that you haven't, that you can reference. Your brain monad, the monad that represents you, your soul, has within it as a microcosm everything in the macrocosm. Everything. There is a little microcosmic version of it there. It's a holographic fractal. It's got self-symmetry with the whole. In a sense, each one of us is a multiverse unto ourselves. And yet each one of us is part of each other. This is why it's so irrational. This is why you can't have a rational idea of the divine, because it's too much. It's not just beyond human reasoning, it's beyond all reasoning. Because you realize that reasoning is the logos, reasoning is the logic, that is the pattern of like how math works, like your multiplication. Logos is what makes 2 times 2 equals 4. That's the logos. And each of us has our own, in our soul, in our monad, has our own specific logos. And if we are all with a similar logos, we experience a similar reality. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. So what's a freaking god like Zeus in that story? It's a little piece. It's another monad somewhere reflecting in yours. In your little dewdrop on Indra's web, there's another dewdrop called Zeus somewhere in the multiverse. In fact, there's a lot of them. And you have access to it. But they're all a manifestation of the same ultimate essence. See, Patrick says, you're just projecting your sense of awareness in another plane, and as far as the thing, the closest, it's a rock. In the closet, it's a rock. That was actually hypothetical, Patchy. I don't think I have a rock in any closet. I don't think so. Nice try, though. I'd be honest if that was right. I don't think I have a rock. I'll have to, it depends on which closet. I got so many closets. I'm pretty sure there's no closet with a rock in it, though. My wife might correct me if she knows of one.
I don't think there is a rock in any closet.
We have maybe a rock in a dresser somewhere. Like, we have a lot of our crystals in places, so it's a lucky guess if you got that for sure. But see, that's the problem, is the words we use. You see, this is why remote viewing doesn't work that way. So what's astral projection? Look, I'm going to tell you guys that, especially because it's 420, I'll happily tell you, there's a lot of both meditative and chemonastic ways to transcend your individual form. And it really would pay off if you would read Carlos Castaneda. And let me just make sure which one it is, because there's one specifically that this is in. Carlos. I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was the teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui way of knowledge. I'm pretty sure that's the first one, right? It's the one where he meets him and he gets initiated by Don Juan. And there's a specific part where he does this one chemical, this one medicine, and he has a hallucination is what people would call it. He has a vision of himself being a bird. And it was so lifelike and real, and he comes back, and Don Juan knows all about it, you know? And he says to Don Juan, you know, what happened to my body while I was a bird? Yeah, you might be right, Ajna. I think I only read one of them. I started reading some of the other ones. I didn't like him as much. He like made Don Juan more of a dick in some of the other ones or something. It just didn't feel right. The first one, the original book about, you know, Mescalito. Like, that's the one. So he has this vision that he becomes a bird, and he asks Don Juan, like, what happened to his body? He says, that's a silly question. You didn't have a body. You were a bird. You don't have a body. I became a bird. You didn't become, yeah, you were a bird. Well, where's the bird? What do you mean, where's the bird? What do you mean, where's my body? Where's any of it? That's a silly question. And he never actually answers it, but it's implied, especially if you understand what Don Juan's saying, see? That's why it's so brilliant. When I heard that part, because I was listening to a tape, when I heard that part, I was like, oh shit, this book's legit. Because that moment was like, yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it is. We as incarnate beings have the whole show backwards, the whole thing. We think that we do things and things are done to us and that we have to act a certain way and blah, 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 blah. You're manifesting this. You're not causing it. You're not at the mercy of it. Everything that's happening is a manifestation of the divine will, of which you are a microcosmic part of a macrocosmic non-dual essence, a whole. There's no separation, but there is individuation, and that's really difficult because because of the way the words work, they sound like I'm saying you're separate, but I'm not. You're individuated the same way a wave is individuated from the rest of the ocean and the other waves. It's still the ocean waving, and it's not even an individual wave, because if you know what a wave is, you also know a wave doesn't move. Like it propagates. Completely different thought. But it's more like a wave, the way a wave will seem to be individuated from the rest of the ocean, but it's really not separate from it at all. It's the same ocean, the whole ocean in a wave. You know what I mean? In a very similar sense, your soul is like that. Your soul is like a wave in an ocean. Your soul is an individuation of the whole. It's not literally separated, but it is from the only reason why you think it's separate or even a true individual, because there's actually a lot of parts that look just like you. Remember, information has no meaning without relationship. So it can't be totally isolated, or else it has no meaning now. It wouldn't look like anything. Which is really important to know, because it has to do with that recent discovery. It's like science is starting to try to tell us that, yeah, the mystics of old were right, by the way. It's just they don't want to admit it, so they use new ways of saying it. You ever notice that? Study your really hardcore, far out quantum physics, like the really far out shit. And it's like they're just coming up with new ways to say the same shit, all the ancients used to say. So you manifest reality. You reveal reality. You don't act in reality. It only looks that way. You've got the whole show reversed. If you're smart and you're listening to me and you understand what I'm saying and you understand the source of it and you study those sources, and then you look at like the Christian Bible, you'll see the same things said, but they're twisted to become this deity's doing it to you. It's an egoistic demiurge. It's not the truth. It takes the truth and turns it into a weapon against you. It's really diabolical how they did it. It's really diabolical. How they've created this separation from you and yourself. It is the most horrible mindfuck I've ever seen. And I don't blame Christians. Christians are not at fault. They just don't know better. They are trapped. They are prisoners of that matrix, and it's really hard to get them out of it, because part of that matrix has been designed so that if you try to leave, it attacks you and you attack yourself. Agent Smith comes out of the woodwork. You know how difficult it is to try to explain to a Christian these ideas that are almost exactly what they believe, except you're not separate from it. And it's not an asshole necessarily. It's not a personal being. It's just the divine. Oh, it's fucking maddening. Like they'll be sitting there going like, the book of Revelation is true. And it's like, yes, but not the way you think. You're not going to get sucked up into the sky before Jesus arrives and all of us non-believers are going to hell. Now watch, that'll happen. And again, if it happens, good. If that's the plan, fuck you. Fuck that shit. It's ridiculous. The point of being alive is to have faith and believe in God no matter what. Faith. What a dirty word. You know, I mean, the demiurge, we vilify it, but it's us. You get it? Like, that's why I'm not truly a Gnostic, at least not a traditional Gnostic, because I don't see this world as bad. The divine wouldn't permit this if it wasn't something it had a will to do. You wouldn't incarnate here if you didn't want to, if it wasn't your will. But what is true in Gnosticism is this idea that that there is a demiurge, but that demiurge is just an externalized projection of your own ego. In order for the demiurge to exist, your own personal demiurge, your own personal identity has to be reified. Neither one is truly real the way you think it is. Not really. As a bit of information that inspires a manifestation, sure, but not as itself, not true in itself. So then we come to the most recent, and I keep bringing this up because it's still lost on people how important this was. There was a recent Nobel Prize given out because a trio of people proved that reality is not locally real. And it's a mind-blowing discovery. It literally blows the doors off everything. It is so profound that they can't even explain it right. You know what I mean? Like they can't even quite, like they're struggling to explain to people what it means. It's so profound. Basically what it means is that things either don't have locality or they don't have thingness in and of themselves. They don't have details unto themselves. When we measure a quantum particle, it does not have any features or identity of its own until it interacts with something. Then all of a sudden it just becomes the most appropriate thing in a probabilistic way. So they literally proved that the essence of reality is meaningless. It doesn't have any actual properties unto itself until it's in relationship with something. And locality is also in question. It's literally what I've been trying to tell you guys. It's literally what Hindu has been telling. It's literally what Kabbalah, what Neoplatonism, guys, it's literally what the metaphysicians have been telling us since the dawn of human recorded, intellectualism. It's literally, probably from Atlantis, they knew this. But because here's something you don't know. I'm going to tell it to you. Look up Adam Weishaupt, the guy who founded the Illuminati. One of the parts of their plan was to destroy all religion and give to the people an atheistic belief system. But for the elite, the intellectuals, there would be a kind of transcendent pantheism. Which is quite literally what I'm trying to teach you guys. Just so you know. For the average person, there would be pure atheism. And that necessitated a shift in the intellectuality of the world, in the intellectual, academia, away from the metaphysics of Plato and the idealists to the Aristotelian perspective, becoming more and more and more ground down into this disgusting, nihilistic, meaningless, dead, bumping particle bullshit story. They have taken from our society anything lofty and reduced it down to a bunch of dust popping around, banging together. They've tried to, and they can't, and they sit there and struggle because they're brainwashed too. They sit there going, we don't know how the brain generates consciousness, but this is what... That's like saying a radio generates a radio station. I'm sick of it. It offends me now. It's getting to the point of, if you even mention consciousness might not be generated by the brain, they go, you're a quack. Like Donald Hoffman, they've shunned him. He's just a panpsychist. He's not even that bad. He's still very rational. He's not some woo flake new age mystic voodoo priest like me. He's a classically trained academic, and they fucking shun him out of academia now. He's only welcome in like science and non-duality, as far as I can see. TED, I don't think TED Talk, well, of course I wouldn't want to be on TED Talk now, that's for sure. So they don't want you to have an awareness of your divinity or anything's divinity. They don't want you to recognize the underlying non-dual nature of everything. They don't want you to see the higher picture. They want you staring at your belly button. They want you staring at the ground. They want you focused on your job. They want you to be a dead, lifeless cog because they see you as an animal. Because in their philosophy, these elites, I don't know if this was what Weishaupt would have done, but it's certainly what perverted out of what he started. I think that they probably had a good idea initially. He probably wasn't that far off from what was right because of the age that he came up in. What he was saying was appropriate, believe it or not. In the 1700s, when the Bavarian Illuminati got started, the Enlightenment was in its infancy. Most people weren't ready for the big picture. They probably would have been best served by an atheistic perspective for a while because religion is terrible. And then after religion had been purged long enough, then you could reintroduce true metaphysical philosophy to the masses once they're uplifted enough to handle it. The average person on the street, if I tell them what I'm saying, they're going to think I'm crazy and either want to kill me or ignore me or whatever. They're not going to get it. But I guarantee you, if I go to certain of the elite, I don't mean Biden, he's not an elite. I mean the hidden masters. If I go to them, they'd be like, oh yeah, you figured it out, huh? You figured a lot of this out. They probably have more than I do, but they'd be like, wow, that's impressive. It's like when your dog figures out how to open a refrigerator and get you a beer. That's probably what they would see me as, like a dog like that. They'd probably still see me as an animal, but they see the average person as a human being, yes, but as a lesser being than themselves. Because they see, they know, they have realized, they have awareness, they have the higher truth, and the average person is too busy twerking and trying to shove shit in their ass. Like literally, guys, have you noticed that that's what they're pushing our society to be more and more like all the time? Have you noticed this? People go, oh, that sounds like you're judging. You're damn right I'm judging. I'm not saying everything was better in the past, but at least there was once upon a time we valued intellect, we valued achievement, we valued things that had meaning and beauty. Now we only value stupid, ignorant, arrogant, brutish, savage, uncouth, stick it in your ass and call it sausage type of shit. It's not that you can't enjoy those things or that you shouldn't. It's that the moment you step out of that and try to be an intellectual or to have beauty or to see the bigger picture, people ridicule you. Go try it. I'm sure you know. That's why you're here. I'm sure you know, because that's why you're so isolated and you feel so alone and you like people like me, because not many people think this way. But they literally have people not just dumbed down, they have you like, do you guys ever watch, what is it, Preacher, honey? Preacher, you guys ever watch Preacher and their version of Jesus? They literally want everybody Like, what was his name? Humperdoo. Humperdinck or Humperdoo? They literally want everybody like Humperdoo. Yeah, he was a clone of Jesus, if you don't know. It's fucking, watch Preacher, it's hysterical. They literally want the average person to be basically Humperdoo. Just good for doing their job. And if you challenge their matrix view, they will attack you. Happens to me all the time. If just the other day I said something about matter not being what things are, and this one person I wasn't offended, by the way, but this one person countered with, can you prove this? It's like, well, you're missing the point of what I'm saying. I'm basically telling you that a dot on a map is not the thing. If I have a map that has a dot on it that's labeled Paris, even though that map may be an accurate map of France, that dot is not Paris. It's a dot. And it's only vaguely representative of the real thing. That is everything you know is a map. The reality, you have to take the map away and look at reality. That's what meditation does. Meditation is taking the map down and looking at reality as it is, without the mental mapping. That's what deep transcendental meditation does. It lets you take the map down. And once you take the map down, you see that everything we call everything is just labels that help us do what? Make stuff. But by the way, you don't need those labels necessarily to do everything. Some things are hard to do without labels. It's hard to do long form math without numbers, right? But the essence of the math doesn't need the numbers for you to do it. It's just your brain, because of your mortal state, you need that help. That's all. It's just a tool. But the essence of the math is not a tool. The essence of a math is an absolute fact that transcends the numbers. Multiplying 2 times 2 ironically works the same as adding it. But the result is 4. So if 2 times 2 is 4, it's not that the number 2 and the number 2 next to each other equals a 4. It is that, and it's not even that this is 4, because these are just notations of the numbers. Take them away, you can still do it. 2 times 2 is 4. You know what 4 is, right? You know what 2 is. You know what happens if you have 2 of them. You don't need numbers. It's totally intuitive. The essence of math is intuitive, meaning it's a divine reality. It is a divine essence that is true everywhere. And the manipulation of that essence, that's the logos. That creates paradigms. That creates the paradigms we're used to, where up is up and down is down and gravity falls. There's paradigms where it doesn't work that way, where the logos is different. All right, we got a couple more super chats. Let me get the easy one out of the way first. Patchy says, the religion of materialism is what they're trying to push complete secularism. That's right. And I think that in Weishaupt's vision was only supposed to be temporary. You know, I don't think that was supposed to be permanent. I could be wrong. There's people more learned on the subject of the original Illuminati. But I don't think that was meant to be permanent. I think that was meant to be temporary till they elevated humanity as a whole. Because if you know what he said, we will create for man a paradise on earth, but first mankind must be made good. One could argue that everything that's going on right now is going according to that plan. It is entirely possible. I'm not saying this is reality, but it's entirely possible that the WEF, that Trump, and this whole big thing we're seeing going on is part of that purification process. The crucible, which makes mankind good and worthy of paradise. Think about it. The only problem is they're willing to go to lengths that we would think of as unethical to do it. And they have built into their plan our resistance to it. The only question is that what we're seeing? Or are we going to see, or are we seeing good versus evil right now? I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a part of me that thinks both are true equally. Maybe there's 2 universes and I'm picking one. I don't know which I've picked yet. But maybe it'll look the same way no matter which one I pick. Maybe the one where Trump is on the right side of history and kicks the WF's ass and we get freedom again, maybe that is the plan. Maybe that's why they allowed all this to happen. Maybe that's why they let Alex Jones teach everybody about this. Maybe because they're giving us two hands. They're saying totalitarian hell or freedom. Which do you want? Are you willing to do nothing and go into the pod and be comfortable and be fed drugs and be a little, battery for their system till the AI takes over? Or are you going to rise and become a god? Which is it, mankind? Which is it? Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe the only way to do that is to say to hell with all of you and just stop playing the game. Maybe. I'm okay with that. If that's what has to happen, no, we're not even close. That's 12 generations from now. That's like halfway through Aquarius. That's not going to happen, right? We're too far from, we're not ready for that. Not as a species, as a small collective, maybe, not as a species. And the meek shall inherit the earth. Do you want to inherit the earth? I mean it. Is that all you want? You just want the earth? Then be meek. That's cool. But yes, they want to push complete secularism. They don't want you to believe in anything that might unite you to something bigger than yourself. They do not want you to have any consideration that we might all be the same spiritual essence as one. They do not want you to see the humanity or the divine spark in one another. They do not want that. Because so long as you have a higher perspective, a loftier view, a non-dual or mystical or divine or spiritual view of one another, they can't trick you into killing each other. That's assuming that this isn't part of a plan to purify us. See, I'm so suspicious, I'm so skeptical of people and things that I don't even trust the good guys. See? More people should be like that, to be honest. Not enough people do that. Everyone is all tribal about it. I act tribal mostly as a defense mechanism against people who hate what I think. So I'll be like, yeah, I'll defend Trump because it's just it's easier to defend Trump than to say, yeah, I think he's this, but I also am going to vote for him, because people are too stupid to understand the nuance. People purity spiral. They believe that you have to support somebody and they have to be perfect to support them. And if you have anything negative to say, then you don't really support them. And they'll try to use that as a wedge to break your support because things are so stupid right now. That's like if I said, I really like mac and cheese, but I don't really like the instant mac and cheese as much. And people will say, well, then you should never eat it. Well, that's not true. It just means it's not my preference. I'd prefer mac and cheese that my wife makes from scratch. It's much better. But that doesn't mean a box of, elbow macaronis with some Kraft shit in it is unedible. It just means that it's not my preference. Well, Trump's like that. Trump's like Kraft mac and cheese to me. Ron Paul would be like my wife's mac and cheese. But I also recognize that Ron Paul couldn't have done what Trump's doing. You could have had Ron Paul backed by all the most powerful people. He, as cool as he was, he couldn't have done what Trump's doing. Trump is like a pit bull. That's why they picked him to do what's happening. You think Trump's doing this? Nah, Trump is playing a role. He's the front man. He may have a lot of money and power involved. He may actually have more money than he lets on because he might own people that own money, like all the rest of the elites. See, the true hidden masters don't own the money. They own the people that own the money. They are off the radar. They're like the Saudis, like the Saudi princes. They don't have to report their income. There's actually some rumors that there are some of them that are trillionaires, not billionaires. Maybe, because they don't have to report anything. They're not a CEO of a corporation. They are monarchs. They're royalty. Totally different set of rules for them. Always has been. So the hidden masters, you don't know who they are. You don't know their names. They're not going to show up as the richest person on earth. They're not going to be Soros in the headlines. It's not going to be Trump. It's going to be people you don't know. We'll never know who they are. I don't think so. I doubt it. Not in this lifetime. There might be people who get close with their research and their snooping and their a priori reasoning where they go through and see who people are interacting with. They might know. Somebody might know. The military might know. But you and me, the little guys, we're never going to know. The average rank and file of humanity will never know. Someone knows, but we're not going to know. So Slim Lewis gave us a 666. He says, you speak of the divinity as a singular. What are your thoughts on possibilities of many multiple divinities, many gods? So part of this is a matter of semantics and language. I am a non-dualist / monist / pantheist. I'm sort of an everythingist when it comes to non-duality. What this means is that I recognize that all forms of separation are an illusion and everything is the same divine being. But that divine being can have individualized manifestations. It can look like separate beings, each in relationship to one another. But at the highest top-down view, it's all like hand puppets talking to each other. So when you say, can there be many gods? In the same sense that you can have two different sock puppets on your hands talking to each other, yes. But they're not separate beings, ultimately. They are technically all you, right? So there can only be, and when I say one, I don't mean one in the numerical one. I mean in the abstract monist sense, the non-dual sense of one. There's a reason why we don't say, like, as a non-dualist, I refrain from saying one, because we say non-duality for a reason. If everything is one, oneness requires at least one other one in order for oneness to make sense. One, as you understand it, is a relativistic concept that requires either another one or a nothing around it. If everything is one, then one loses all meaning. You see? There's a thought experiment I've put you guys through a dozen times. Why it's going to be like, not again. The thought experiment is I want you to imagine an infinite cube made of solid gold. So imagine a cube of infinite size made of pure solid gold, nothing else. There's a problem with this statement, by the way. That's the point of this exercise. What's wrong with what I just said? Well, if it's infinite, you can't call it a cube because a cube requires an outside. A cube requires edges. It requires faces. You can't have edges and faces if it's infinite. So it can't be a cube or it can't be infinite. One or the other is wrong. If it's infinite, it can't be a cube. If it's a cube, it can't be infinite. When I say it's made of pure solid gold, if that is infinite, then that's all there is, because there wouldn't be space for anything else. There would just be solid gold. And if there is just solid gold, then it can't be gold because there's no other substance to compare it to. There's no silver, there's no meat, there's just gold. And because there's no empty pockets in there, it's solid gold, it's not Swiss cheese. Everything is that substance. So it can't even be a substance anymore because there's nothing insubstantial to compare it to. So the statement, imagine a solid gold cube made of pure gold, of infinite size, is an incredibly, paradoxically contradictory statement. But that is literally what we're saying when we say everything is one. One what? Oneness. What's oneness? So you can't call it one. You can't even call it an infinite one. You can't even call it an everything is one. You can't call it an everything. It is a non-dual. It's a not two. So you can't say that the divine is one. You can say it's not two. Do you get it? So if I say everything is divine, it's like saying everything is gold. If I say everything is divine, it's like saying everything is gold. So that's why there is this tradition that just refers to as non-duality. Because this way you can be internally consistent in your mindset. This is why I insist upon it sometimes. Because I can say everything is God, but that gives you this vision of like a solid gold cube. It doesn't make sense. It's a lower level understanding. It's like the kindergarten. You know, when you get to your initiate and you're explaining to them everything, you start with everything is divine. Oh, what does that mean? Okay, sit down, take a deep breath. It's going to be a while. But you start them off with something they can understand. And then you work them into the more and more like surreal reality in which all of this stuff is bullshit. So what are my thoughts on the possibilities of multiple divinities? No. There's only one divinity, but there can be many gods. But all of that is illusory. When I say it's illusory, I don't mean there isn't an essence that is real. What I mean is the idea of separate individual deities, number one, they only look separate. When we call them gods, that's just a word we put around a manifested bit of primordial essence of information. We call it a god, but there is no such thing. See, these are all hallucinatory things that in themselves have no locality and no meaning in themselves. They obtain a meaning only when put in referential position around each other. Then they get meaning. But the divine, the totality, doesn't have time or space in it. Time or space is a projection of consciousness selectively being aware of things. It's a mirage. Time and space are a mirage. That doesn't mean it doesn't have consequence when you walk in front of a bus. It's just, it don't happen to you. You're just, when you read about a character getting killed in a book, did anybody die? No, it was just a bunch of ink blobs that inspired you to imagine someone dying. It's exactly the same thing right now with what you're experiencing. This is why all of the really ridiculous mystics, especially the Zen monks and shit, they have no fear of death, no real fear of death, not the ones that really get it. This is why they would, Alan Watts used to tell a story all the time about how Zen monks would impress samurai warlords by literally being totally fearless and telling them that they could teach them to be that way too. And it wasn't that they were fearless, it was that they knew that death had no consequence. But Thorne, if it has no consequence, why do anything? Why indeed? There's still reasoning, there's still ethics, there's still a valid, just because you can invent any story imaginable, does that mean that you're gonna? Well, no, there's a logos involved. There's a logos, there's a set of ideals that in this incarnate state you're fixated on. It's like the rules for how you manifest. And so long as you're in this mortal state, you're going to live within that logos. You're not going to be, likely, doesn't mean impossible. You're not likely, especially if you're an enlightened being, to go around raping and murdering because you realize you're raping and murdering yourself. It's not that you can't. There's nothing stopping you. It's that you realize that that's not really what you want. In fact, for most sane people, stuff like that, it's not even that we're afraid of it or whatever. It's literally just not what we want. Because intuitively, we know it's like chopping your arm off. You wouldn't do that without good reason, would you? Like, I'm capable of all the darkest shit. I'll practice black magic and curses. That's not a problem for me. I don't have that taboo, but I do recognize that I have to have a legitimate, pragmatic reason for it. Someone says, Thorne, I'll pay you $300. I'm not going to do a death curse for you for $300. I don't do those. No, you do it yourself if you want to do it. I'm not a mercenary to kill people for you. It doesn't work that way anyway. If you understood how it worked, you'd realize how easy it was and you wouldn't need me. You're manifesting your own subjective, microcosmic, monadic world, and it's exactly the way you will it to be right now. You don't need to do a spell. You don't need a specific practice. The specific practice just reveals that to you. I didn't come to this because I invented it trying to figure out a new fancy way to do. No, everything that I'm telling you has been revealed to me through my practices. After a while, I'm like, why do I bother with these candles? Why do I bother with the bibbity bobbity boo? Why am I doing this shit with the, I don't need that. Most of my life, I've manifested everything I've needed to without doing that. And when I do that, it doesn't make it better or worse. It's just more fun to do it that way. Oh, that's why, because it's a stepping stone to pull yourself up by your bootstraps till you realize what's really happening. And what's really happening is not that. This isn't like, you're not like filling yourself with magic juice and squirting it at shit, making it move. What an egoistic, nonsensical way to look at things. That's so childish. And that's why the elite push it on you. What kind of magic are you encouraged to study in this world? I mean, really encouraged. What kind of magic is society into right now? Harry Potter, New Age, I have an astral body that I can take out and I can fly around and I can make things happen with my mind and telekinesis. And it's all the stupid fantasy shit. Not that fantasy's bad. Fantasy's a great allegory. It's a great metaphor. It's a great bit of symbolism. Superstition is useful when it's used in the right frame of mind. As symbolism or as just an aesthetic you enjoy. But that's not the reality. The reality is something way deeper and crazier and scarier than anything in your little, The Conjuring movies or your Harry Potter shit. That is laughable. And when I go online on social media, 99% of the people are into that. They're into that laughable shit. And a handful will get turned on to the kind of shit I talk about, and hopefully they get revealed. You know what I mean? They get illuminated, hopefully. And I'm not the only one. You got Travis Magus. There's a lot of other guys talking like me. Come at it from different ways. We have different nuances. Yes, we don't agree on everything, but there are those who get the bigger picture, and those are the ones that I would encourage you to follow. That's not to say that the others don't have merit or there's nothing useful about them. If you like the more superstitious theistic approach as an aesthetic, by all means, but don't delude yourself into thinking that's real. I get disgusted, literally burnt out, throwing up in my mouth, disgusted at a lot of the stuff that I see. And that's on me. That's my own, prejudices. I don't mean like racist prejudice. I mean my own dislike. That's my own shadow I'm dealing with. I shouldn't be judging those people for being ignorant any more than I judge my dog for not realizing that she doesn't have to shit in the middle of the floor. Right? It's not her fault. She's a dog. Well, it's not their fault. They've been dumbed down and misinformed. If they had access to the reality from a younger age, they would probably get it too. So it's not them, but it is still disgusting to me because I know that there, but for the grace of my own divinity go I. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's daunting to penetrate that wall of ignorance that they put up, because they're no different than the Christians and all these other fundies and shit that we don't like. They're no different. And this is why, I made a joke the other day about Mercury in retrograde, and everybody mostly got it. But somebody said, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, sometimes he says these things. I think he's just being funny with me. Sometimes I think he thinks he takes me too literally. I don't know if he's a little on the spectrum or what, but he said, something to the effect of, you're talking to your customers this way. I'm like, what are you, my boss? No, I'm not going to kiss your ass. If you like my books, that's great. I'm not kissing your ass. It's never going to happen. So it drives me a little bit crazy. Just a little bit. Scotty says, but what's real? Exactly. Wasn't that my all-time favorite movie just about? Lately, it's like I want to watch it over and over and over. What Dreams May Come. We used to, when I worked at Blockbuster, we called it Wet Dreams May Come. But What Dreams May Come, one of my favorite movies of all time. And there's this fantastic moment where Robin Williams is there with, I can't remember his name. Cuba, my boy, Cuba Gooding. And Cuba, you know, he says, you know, is this real? He says, what is real? What is real anyway? That movie, although it's hyperbolic in its presentation, you know, it's cinematic and it's played up. That movie is, guys, you're already there. You just think you're incarnated. And I know this because of certain things that I've experimented and I've seen. It's not a simple matter of just desiring it. You can't just want to, but your will is to be incarnate. And being incarnate is not a thing that you become, like you don't become it. It's a delusion. It's an ignorance. You believe that you are. And so that's all you can be. But you can actually transcend that by expanding your mental picture, by expanding your mind, realizing the possibilities, and then literally stare at them till you go there. It's just like learning to ski or skate or ride a bike. When you don't know how to turn, one of the first things that they taught me when I learned how to ski, and I was having a little trouble getting the wedge to turn the way I wanted, they told me a shortcut. They said, just look in the direction you want to go. Don't worry about your feet. Just maintain that wedge shape and look at where you want to go to the, like, go like this even if you have to, so you can't see what's in front of you, and stare at what you want to go at. And holy fuck, your body just knows what to do. Suddenly I was turning like a champ, like as if I knew how to do it since I was born. Your body knows. Well, your soul, your psyche, your spirit, the divine knows how to get anywhere in multiverse, anywhere. You just have to be aware of it. You just have to look at it. You just have to know to look at it. But it's still difficult. There's a challenge, because if you're attached to this identity, if your paradigm of reality, your logos is limited, and you have only this materialistic logos that you believe in, and your identity is highly egoistic and attached to this, you can't jump to other realities. I've done it a few times now. I know I have. It's no question. It's a scary thought. It's a terrifying thought if you're egoistic, because you start to sit there and go, wait, am I not me anymore? What is me? Is my wife not my wife anymore? Guys, every moment that goes by, you're not the same person. Your wife isn't the same person. You can't hold on to anything. So what's the difference if you jump from one universe to another? There's none. It's just you're making a bigger leap than second to second. You're jumping to a completely different reality. What's up, Jen? Woo! Happy 420, nerds. Yeah, I got some mines. That'll be coming out later. A trope. You're not wrong, though, because that can happen. Even in what I'm talking about, you can jump into a reality. You sit there and go, remember, you can't confuse desire for will. But just for semantics sake, I really want to see the timeline where, I'm a billionaire. And you go to that timeline and you find out you're a billionaire because you had you might get a monkey's paw. You know what I mean? You find out you're a billionaire because you got hit by Elon Musk's plane and your body was mangled and you're just like a head on a stick, and he made you a robot body or something. You know what I mean? Like, you might monkey's paw it, and in your attempt to go somewhere else, you may hit a tree. And it is possible. The Order of the Black Dragon says, I'm so high as fuck, yo. Woo. You know, there is a point where you can't get any higher percentage of THC, at least not in the plants themselves. I guess you can get a higher percentage in like concentrate. Yeah. I guess that's what you're talking about. Like, I think that this one lady I was watching said it's like the most you can get ever, like fluke, is like 40%. And that's insane. That's an insane amount of THC. Even 30 is insane if you think about it. Utterly insane. And the MJ is absolutely a entheogen. There's no question in my mind. You know, call me a Rastafarian. It is absolutely an entheogen. Absolutely. Order of the Black Dragon says, if I go celibate, will I be able to hop timelines? I don't think it, you know, it depends on your attachments. Being celibate, it depends. Are you attached to something sexual? Like, are you attached to a specific sexual partner or something? You know, or it depends. I could see there's potentially ways to, the limitations of where you can go are almost all psychiatric. Damn it, Patchy, those jobs suck. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't, so from this bottom up perspective, you can absolutely have an experience of having an etheric body that can leave your body and all this, like Jen's described. You can absolutely have that. It's just that from the up, from the highest perspective looking down, that's not what it is. It just looks that way. But if you're aware, you can combine both and get the full picture. When you integrate both in a synthesis, the as above and the so below, I consider that, like, people will be like, well, the ether body is part of the as above. No, it's not. That's still part of the so below. It's just a little bit subtler than the material, but it's still part of the so below because it's all image. The image is not the thing. If you can have an image of it, that's not it yet. You know what I mean? But the etheric body is a little bit, it's like a little, you know, it's just like the little surface. It's like cell shading. Think of the etheric body a little bit like the way they do cell shading in older video games, because they would literally put a partially transparent overlay over the vector, over the graph, over the geometry, and have it just a couple pixels above the normal size, but they would make it partially transparent so that when you were looking through it, it looked like a black outline. Pretty wild shit. Pretty cool. I like cell shading. I think cell shading is cool. So the etheric world is like cell shading everything. When you look at your aura, it's not what you see, by the way, with your eyeballs. It starts that way, but it's not that. Like when you look for an aura, that is easily explained by burning your retina with the image, by the way. The way that the people on YouTube, when you Google or YouTube how to see auras, they'll say, well, take a black thing or a white thing and put your hand and then look at it, stare at it for long enough, and you'll start to see an outline. You do realize that there's a totally rational explanation for that. It has nothing to do with your etheric body. That doesn't mean you can't see it. It just means that you're looking at, that all that does is it actually gets your eyes used to, you have to glaze your eyes over, look past it. Like you have to look through it. You can't look at your hand. You have to look through it or whatever object. And it's not that funky little outline you get from the burning of your retinas. There's something else. You'll eventually, and it's not going to look like a rainbow. That's all. Look, I know people who swear up and down it looks like a rainbow, and maybe to you it does, but it doesn't look like a rainbow. Your etheric body doesn't look like a rainbow. You might insert rainbow. You might make it look like a rainbow, but it doesn't itself look like a rainbow. It doesn't change colors. It's not a color based on your emotion. That's all just new age fluff. Trying to make it like Hollywood. You know how I know that auras are real 100%? In a sense, anyway. I don't mean in the way that the New Agers describe it, but in an etheric sense. I know it's 100% real because I can close my eyes in a perfectly pitch black room and I can move my hands around and I can still see them. I don't see them as hands though. I see something that has no definitive shape moving. And if I open my hands and if I do this, I can sort of see very vaguely, not individual fingers, but I can see it. And it's not with my eyes. I'm not seeing with my eyeballs. It's my third eye that's seeing. It's the, call it the pineal gland, if you wish. Whatever you want it to be, go ahead and make it that. Whatever your language is, go for it. Tommy says, that's DH, Order of the Dragon. Knock and it shall be open. I can't enlighten you. You have to enlighten yourself. When the divine that you are is ready to awaken, it will. When I use my divine power, there is no world to destroy, my friend. The world is in your mind. That is what it means when Shiva opens his third eye. He realizes he sees through the delusion and it instantly evaporates. So if you want to destroy the world, realize what it is and it will go away immediately. Even if only for a little while. All right, Jen, smell you later too. Take a bath, damn it. Jen's Q. We like Jen. Abba says they're attached to cheerleaders. I think that was in reference to the celibacy thing. He's attached to cheerleaders. I mean, you could go to a dimension that has cheerleaders too. It doesn't have to, you know. What I mean by attachment is there's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. But in this specific instance, I'm referring to the attachment to specificity. You see, every single one of you guys right here, right now, myself included, take for granted that every moment is different. In other words, we take for granted that the being that I am, this specific moment, is not the same entity that I am this moment. They look the same, they sound the same, they have memories of each other, knowledge of it, blah, 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 but they're not the same thing. There's a continuity going on. But they're not the same thing. I mean, they are in the grand sense, but in the specific incarnate sense, I left that guy behind. It's like a flowing river. It's sweeping by. Every moment is a new moment. It's the only moment there is for you. So the person that you were a minute ago, not you anymore. You've got to let go of this. Otherwise, you're not shifting anywhere. I know Black Dragon's high as fuck, but damn, some of these comments. Patrick says he's attached to veal. You're attached to veal? I won't really eat veal. I don't like eating baby animals. It just feels wrong. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying I don't like it. You know, I'll say like as you get, I don't want to sound like some kind of, you know, wishy-washy new ager or something, but as you like climb that enlightenment staircase, you definitely get a sense of, you almost get a sense of guilt when you're in your incarnate state, when you're really egoistic. You get a sense of guilt about eating meat. In your truly enlightened state, you don't, because you're a human being. You're an omnivore, that you're not an obligate carnivore, but you can't really live as a pure vegan or pure vegetarian. You kind of, there's ways to do it, but they're not natural. You know, you have to go out a little bit out on a limb to do it right. But a lot of people who practice, you know, certain vegan lifestyles do eat proteins, like living things like fish or bugs or something. It might be pescatarian or something. But when you start to understand that even plants have conscious awareness and stuff, eating a plant, it's not like you're not causing a plant to suffer. It just suffers in a plant way. It suffers. If you think that a plant doesn't feel the fact that you're killing it and eating it, you're dumb. Like you're old fashioned. You're still thinking like someone from like the 1800s or something. Plants absolutely do know what you're doing. They don't know it the same way you do. They don't have this lofty intellect that tells it what's happening, but they do have an awareness, a conscious awareness that they're being hurt. They absolutely do. This is known by science for a long time. It's just that they say, well, they don't have feelings like we do. No, they don't have our kind of feelings. That doesn't mean they don't have feelings. It's not that they can't suffer. They literally scream when you chop one down. Not just chemically scream, they scream electrochemically. Like, it's wild what's going on inside the plant. You don't know. They're not dumb. They're not as dumb as you think anyway. Might be one of the reasons why the shroom, why Terence McKenna has such a mystical relationship with it, because it's very possible that there is a consciousness there. An alien consciousness, to be sure, something that's not, when I say alien consciousness, I don't mean that it's a different consciousness. I mean alien in the sense that its intellect, its mind is alien, is what I meant to say. That's right, Gage. Either way, you got to eat something living, at least for the time we do. Look, why can't we just inject the necessary components into our body? Why do I have to eat meat? Why can't I just eat proteins that are made up in a jar? Like, why does it have to come from a living thing? I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm saying why. Well, we don't have the technology yet. Okay, fair. But that just means there's no reason other than technology. It doesn't mean that your body can't. Of course it could. Order the Black Dragon says, are you scared of old age and dying? No, I will say that, in the moment I might end up being scared. Like if a bus is coming to run me over, I'm going to jump the fuck out the way. But do I have existential dread of death or old age? I will say that I do have apprehension of having disability. So like having a stroke or falling downstairs and breaking all my bones and shit and being breaking my neck and being invalid or whatever. Like, I have a standing agreement with my wife, if I get into a situation where I am like that, if I give you like the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, take me somewhere where they do legal euthanasia and give me a beautiful way out. You know what I mean? Don't hold on to me if I'm fucked. But am I scared of old age and dying? Nah. Not even a little bit. In the moment, I will be apprehensive. I will be afraid of the method of death, sure. But I'm not going to be afraid of the death. No. That's just a transition. It's just an awakening. The only time to be afraid of death is if you haven't died already. You have to die in the spirit. You have to die in the... You have to die in the egoistic sense. Once you've died once already, the mortal death is a game. It's nothing to be. I've already died a few times, Black Dragon. I've already died a few times. Like literally, I've sat there in some of these trances going, oh shit, is this death? Holy crap. This is like death. I don't feel my heart. I don't feel my lungs. I don't feel anything. I feel nothing. Am I dead? Holy shit. Am I even breathing? I still have this feeling of flow going through me, but am I breathing? I don't feel breathing. I don't feel pulse. I don't feel anything. Who am I? Who was I? Am I a person? What the fuck? I've already gone through that a few times. If that's what death is like, I'm good. I'm ready. Not a problem. Doesn't make me scared. Nothing to fear. The only thing that dies is your egoistic delusion of yourself. That's all that dies. And it doesn't die. You just realize it was wrong. Death is an illusory word. That's right, CJ. And while you were having it, you were having deep gnosis of the divine. It's only when you come back up from that or come back down from that, depending upon how you look at it, that you fear it again. But when you're in it, it's heaven, even if you're watching hell, ironically enough. Yeah, I don't know what to make of the Kirlian photography, because I understand that the etheric the true nature of the etheric is, it's interfacial in the sense that it bridges the gap between pure form and pure substance, but I don't think that's a reality. I think that's a model, because everything that you're experiencing is a simulacrum, meaning you see things in a way that represents reality, but it's not the reality of what it is. So when you think of the etheric body, it's real from the bottom up perspective, but it is not real in the absolute objective sense. Does that make sense? Probably not. This is where it's hard to get, you kind of have to understand the full essence of what I'm trying to talk about. And I'm still writing the book about. But if you're getting the point a little bit through me talking, what you see in Maya is not it. So in Maya, there's this idea of the body, the etheric body, the spirit body, the different layers of your aura and all this. They're not real. They're thought forms that you use to identify and manifest other stuff based on that. To put it one way, think of it like this. If all you believe in is a material body, and that's all your logos allows, that's all your ego attachment is on this body, then you can't have an out-of-body experience. Not really. You'll just think you're dreaming. You won't realize what it really is. You can have the exact same experience that I have when I go into the deep woes outside and I'm completely ego death flying around as whatever the fuck, and I'm seeing other universes. Whatever that is would just be a dream to me 10 years ago until I realized. Now I understand that there is no such thing as a dream that isn't real. If you're conscious, if you have a conscious experience of it, somewhere in the multiverse, that's a reality. And when I say that's a reality, I mean it's a projection of reality. It's a legitimate projection. If you can imagine an ocean that is made of heads rolling around, tumbling, laughing as they become waves, that exists in the multiverse somewhere. If you imagine everything made of paint, I think that was in Doctor Strange. If you imagine everything made of paint, that exists somewhere in the multiverse. Somewhere. Because there is no somewhere. All of it is in the essence of the divine. It's all in that singularity. You can manifest any of it. Just by imagining, you've already manifested it in one form, but it can manifest in a very vivid, real form for you. And this sounds insane. This is why it's difficult. This sounds exactly like what they tell you not to think about. Lord, Thorne sounds crazy. What would make you crazy is if, well, honestly, being incarnated is closer to a kind of insanity than being discarnate, but let's not go there. Being insane is to not be grounded. If you're aware that there's a multiverse that looks this way, but you're able to keep one foot down in this, you're fine, because there's nothing wrong with being here. And there's nothing wrong with being there. You can do both, because you're the divine. You can be all of it at once. Just pick one. Which one do you want to be? Isn't death itself just a transition of consciousness? It's a turning of a page. Think of it like that. You turned a page. You turned a page in a book called Everything. That's all you did. And in the book called Everything, you turned a page, and when you turned that page, on the page beforehand, it said Patchwork died. On the next page, you're still reading. The character Patchwork will no longer be supported by this story in its current form. That's all it means. You're not Patchwork, you're the one reading about Patchwork. So consciousness doesn't transition in or out of anything. Not really. the things transition in and out of consciousness. If you think of it that way, it clicks. And I will remind you that as insane as what I'm describing about the multiverse, it is literally, if you're into like Hindu, Advaita Vedanta type shit, it's literally said in there. Multiverse is completely part of the essence of Hindu tradition. Completely. Their vision of it's a little bit different than maybe our modern one, but they weigh the same. They're the same. To the best of their knowledge, when they came up with that concept originally, it's exactly the same. It's utterly mind-blowing to realize this, to see it coming to pass, to see the world realizing it, to see it coming out in fiction, to see the Illuminati dangling it in front of us. Do you want to know the truth, or do you want the bullshit twerk game? Which do you want, animal? Read Dune and read the Bene Gesserits and what they were saying to you. Are you a human or are you an animal? Which are you? If you're a human, you're a little bit more enlightened than an animal. You're not better, you're just more aware. You have a gleam in your eye. You know. Ajit, I love you, man. As a wannabe not Hindu, I approve that message. I love it, brother. Just don't forget, guys, Hinduism is just a word because there is no religion called Hinduism. It just literally means all the beliefs of the people of the Indus Valley. That's all it is. What I love about Hindu spirituality is that it's accessible. And a lot of these other like Kabbalah and Hermeticism, they're a lot harder to relate to, or I should say there's not as many living examples of it except in the occult circles, and most of them don't know their shit. They know their shit like a bookworm, but they don't know it like a practitioner. And the ones that do don't talk, or they do and they talk like me. There's a lot of people, like if you watch like Esoterica and Foolish Fish, maybe Foolish Fish might know a little bit. I kind of get the feeling he's sort of seen the other side a little bit more. But Esoterica, he's a bookworm. Brilliant bookworm. I would never try to argue with that man about specifics at all. He'd probably he knows more than I've ever known. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know when it comes to factual knowledge. Absolutely. Hands down. He's like a living encyclopedia. The guy's brilliant. Has he transcended? I don't know. Maybe he has, but I don't get that vibe from him. Foolish Fish, a little bit, I do. So what I'm trying to say is that if you memorize the Vedas, you don't get enlightened. If you memorize the Golden Dawn, you don't get enlightened. If you memorize Hermetic principles, the Hermetic tradition, you don't get enlightened. In fact, you can be enlightened by having a fart. I'm totally fucking serious. Yes, Tommy, I agree with you. And there's a reason for that, Tommy. The Western tradition, because we have been, the Western identity is very left-brained. It's very intellectual. It is very logos, and it is very diluted. It might be the most diluted. Like, I would prefer a superstitious New Ager in a lot of ways compared to the hyper secularized intellectual, because at least the superstitious person's mind is open enough to entertain certain possibilities. I'm not saying they're right, they're entirely wrong, but at least they're open. The Western mind is usually very closed, and it's very much dogmatic and doctrinal in nature. It's very much, it must be this way or it's not real. They're very materialist. And that means that in order to get someone like that out of that mindset, you literally have to pound their head with more intellectual ideas than they know what to do with until their brain scrambles and they go boop. And in that boop, there's a chance they get it. Why do you think the Golden Dawn looks so complicated? Everything the Golden Dawn contains, you can do without the Golden Dawn. Every single thing. Do you honestly think that the Lesser Banishing Ritual, the pentagram, is a magical thing that does anything? It's a fucking thought form parade, guys. That's what it is. You're doing thought forms until you transcend the thought forms and you don't need them anymore. Yes, it's a functional system. Yes, it works great. Yes, it's practical. Yes, you're not doing it wrong by following it. I'm just telling you that you don't need it. It's good. I like parts of it. I don't use it because I don't like the symbolism myself. Like, I don't like the angels. that doesn't resonate with me. I'm more into exotic stuff. The whole Judeo-Christian mythology, I hold at arm's length because I don't like religion. But that doesn't mean you can't use it. It's a thought form. It's a glyph. It's a way of, if you pick apart the symbolism, if you understand the symbolism, you realize what you're doing. You're literally creating a diagram of your divinity and stepping into it, and without even knowing it, because they don't tell you. It's right there in black and white. The way they describe the ritual, what you're doing and what you're calling yourself, and how you're literally becoming God in symbolic form. But they don't necessarily tell you that. They sort of hope you figure it out as you work through the system, just like Freemasonry and shit. They hope you figure it out. Maybe halfway through you get it, then you purify. You reach a point where you realize that what you're doing is you're shifting, you're quantum leaping. You're not causing things to happen, you're going to where they're happening. The mountains came to Muhammad, is what I'm implying. You're not going to the mountains, they're coming to you. Meaning consciousness is centering in the mountains. Because consciousness don't move. Consciousness doesn't do anything. It's just consciousness. And everything happens within it. So the mountains come to you, you don't go to them. So you literally shift the reality you're witnessing to the one you want to see. And rituals help because they let you step out of what your limited beliefs and logos and attachments allow for. If you create a ritual to do X, Y, or Z, that is in your mind, that is a rational excuse for why it might work. Because you might have at least a superstitious fear of magic being real. This is why, in a lot of ways, the newer, like the novice who knows nothing often gets a really powerful validation of magic the first couple times. It's like the first 3 times you do a magic spell in your life, like sincerely do it. I don't mean like as a gag or as a bet. I mean, when you, as a inexperienced person who doesn't know, but you think it might be real, when you try it, since you've let go of your attachments and inhibitions to try it, you can make quite a huge jump the first couple times. Once you start getting an idea of what it is, it actually gets harder because now you're attached to the idea of magic being lightning bolts and lesser banishing rituals that are real and all. You start adopting a dogma and an attachment to the dogma, and it makes it harder, believe it or not. It's better when you don't know what the fuck you're doing in a lot of ways. Not as a rule, but as an observation, it does seem to be that way. I would argue, or the Black Dragon, that it's not that they move, it's that you went to a reality where movement is possible and that's what you saw, and then you came back. Because I've seen stuff like that too. So it's not that I would say that statues can't move. It depends on the logos of your mind and what dimension of the multiverse it's tuned into. If you're tuned into a materialistic, mundane universe, you'll never see them move except by optical illusion. If you shift out of that, you will see them move and it won't be an optical illusion, but you will probably shift back to where it is an optical illusion because it's so hard to stay there because you're stuck with an egoistic attachment to this limited reality. I know that because I get stuck here too. Every once in a while I shift out and I see the weirdest shit and I come back and go, was that my imagination? Just the other day, and I am not permitted to tell you the specifics, but just the other day I had a really powerful confirmation at work, and it was almost enough to make me cry. I mean, it was literally something miraculous on a small scale, but still miraculous. It was like saying, prove it. And then a split second later, proof appears. That's kind of what it was like. And it was quite shaking, to be honest. Or the Black Dragon says, so I'm teleporting? No, because you're not moving, see? But if you want to think of it that way, you can. But invert that a little bit. Instead of thinking like I'm teleporting, think of it like I'm changing the channel on a television. That's a better analogy. It's more like you're changing a channel on a television. But you like this show so much, you change back. Usually, with exception, you change back. There's exceptions. You don't always... What do you think the Mandela effect is? Your body isn't... You don't go back and forth between universes, your body. You change bodies. You change realities. You shift. But it's not that you're teleporting. It's more like you're tuning in to a different iteration of yourself. This is why it's difficult, because every single one of you guys, I don't think anybody here, maybe one of you, I don't know. The majority of you are still stuck in the bottom up perspective so hard that I have to say it to you like you're teleporting, but you're not. CJ's saying it right. Black Dragon, all is one. Therefore, you are part of it and it's part of you. So there's no teleporting. You're literally just shifting your attention to where it's real. That's all. And you shift back. In fact, that's sort of why it works that way. Have you ever noticed that people will see the most wild supernatural things, but then they can't prove it later on a second attempt? This is why, in some ways, I have a feeling that, no, the average scientist doesn't know this, but some of the skeptics that run this shit and make up these tests for magic and stuff, they know, because they set up tests where if they understood the metaphysical reality that magic is enabled by, they understand why it doesn't work like a machine. It doesn't work like a machine because it's not mechanical. It's not a game of cause and effect. It's a game of psychology, literally psycho-spiritual transitioning. You're literally tuning into a reality that you're not tuned into now. If I tune into a reality where ghosts are literal disembodied people walking around, then that's what I'm going to see. But because it's my subjective soul that's shifted to witnessing that, when I come back to this version, this logos, this paradigm of reality where that's not real, no one else will see it. Only people in that reality will see it. And because of the way this egoistic thing happens, I'm only going to go to a reality where it's going to be limited. And I'm going to come back and I'm not going to be able to prove it. All right, Order of the Dragon. You're high as fuck. I'm not answering that question. It's a funny question, but I'm not going to answer it. Too much to unpack. No, dude, I'm laughing with you, brother. Trust me. Trust me. I am not judging. I am not judging you. No, man, I wouldn't spoil your time, man. You have fun. You ask those off the wall questions. That's fine. I'm not going to respond to all of them, though. Just hope you don't be offended. It's not, I am not judging you. Fuck hell yeah, man. Have fun, man. Have fucking fun. It's 420, dude. Enjoy it. That's right. CJ gets it, or at least he gets the intellectual side of it. He might get the whole, especially if he did those heroic trips he's been talking about. He gets it probably better than most people. He says, we're constantly shifting to alternate realities every moment as we continuously create the realities, not create, manifest. Change the word create to manifest, as we constantly manifest the reality we're experiencing. Absolutely. That is very well said. You seem to get it. You shall be my first pupil, my first Padawan. Yes. That's right, Scody. All waves distort when they pass it. So That is it. That is, in the way I'm describing things, that is the mind. The mind is the medium through which consciousness views the divine itself. The mind can expand, it can contract, it can be distorted, wavy, bumpy, obfuscated with clouds and all kinds of shit. So the more you expand and clarify your mind, the farther afield you can see. And the more you relinquish attachment to your ego and expand your mind, the further afield you can jump. The more you get unattached to your ego, the longer you can stay there to the point of permanence. Meaning, mandala effect isn't limited to just jumping around timelines of this specific reality. You might even be able to, I haven't done it that I know of. If I've done it, I don't remember it. You can jump to a universe where Hollywood level shit is real. Like Harry Potter isn't a story in a book. Somewhere in the multiverse, Harry Potter's real. At least that's in theory what's going on. I don't doubt it for a minute. You could theoretically jump into that reality. I don't doubt it at all. It's what makes it doubtable is that, as far as we know, well, number one, you can't prove it to anybody. So if you did it and you come back, you sound like you're crazy. If I jump to that reality and come back with memory of it, because I can't prove it objectively, I'm not using a portal. I'm not walking my body through a portal to go to that reality. So I can't bring anything with me except for knowledge of it. If that, this also assumes that when I come back, I'm coming back in a way that I have knowledge of it. That's hard. Because you're probably going to remember it like it's a dream. So I will have an experience that I dreamt I was Harry Potter. And when I tell you that, the best I can do. But the truth is, there are cases, sometimes it's just a dream, right? That's the fucky thing, is both are true simultaneously. It can be a dream and real at the same time. At the same time, you could be dreaming about a reality that you're not there for. But you can also go there. That's why it's really fucking hard. Because it's such a mind fuck. Everything you think is real is not. It's a story. It's part of the story. So you can go to that Harry Potter universe, come back and tell somebody about it. And if you tell them that it's real, they're going to think you're nuts. Even though you were really there. Some people say this sounds like subjectivism. To a degree, it is. To a degree. My personal philosophy is still, because of the way the terms are described, I don't put stock in either one, because I recognize that subjectivity and objectivity are illusory. They're all part of the non-dual delusion. The non-dual is real, meaning subject and object are illusion. There's only the reality. Okay? So since there's no duality, there is no subject and no object. So both of those arguments are wrong. But to an objectivist, what I'm saying sounds like subjectivism. To a subjectivist, I will sound like an objectivist, because I still use those terms as well. Yeah, Patchy, that's the thing. I'm not sure I would go that far. So he says, isn't it that all dreams are just moving to different realities? At the very least, you're witnessing them. Now, are you witnessing them firsthand or third hand or second hand or what? There are times that I am pretty confident that I temporarily shifted to another reality and come back and I see it as a dream because I had a dream here of it. If that makes sense. That's hard to see. The thing is, memory is not stored in consciousness. Memory is stored in the specific incarnation that you take. You understand? So if I were to shift consciousness, if I were to shift my soul to Patchwork, I wouldn't remember D.H. Thorne the way I remember D.H. Thorne. because Patchwork doesn't have his Patchwork as an incarnation does not have, in this case, memories of being me. Somewhere in the multiverse, though, there is a Patchwork that does, for whatever reason, the paradigm of that multiverse makes sense, does have that memory. So somewhere in the multiverse, there is a Patchwork that remembers being D.H. Thorne. Remember, the multiverse is infinite. In theory. I believe it is. I don't know, because that's something you can't know. It's part of the divine. It's not something, it's too intellectualized. It's only something we can infer. I believe it is based on what I understand of the divine. The divine is infinite. Well, it's boundless. It's ineffable. It's enigmatic. All of those words mean endlessness. If the divine is endless, then so is the multiverse, right? Yeah, good way to put it, Ajna. Ma Kali is channeled. Ma Kali channeled is called Kundalini Ma, and she will devour everything you think. I know. That's people externalize these things. They should be internalized. You really want to, if you internalize them first, holy shit, then the rest makes sense. Internalize that whole destruction, and then kablowie. So it could be patchy. My only thing is I don't like to say it absolutely. I do think sometimes it is. And I can tell you that I have shifted and stayed in some reality. I know I have. I've had some weird... I've had it on videos. I've explained it. It's Mandela effect level shit. There's a certain disorientation that comes with it. Deja vu can be an example of it happening. Very difficult, guys. It's very difficult. Because the problem is that you're kind of, even now, I'm trying to rationalize it, but there's no reason to rationalize it. I could literally just let go and let it be what it is, and I would be fine, but I'm too busy trying to rationalize it, because if I don't, I feel crazy, right? If I say like, oh, I jump universes, even that's rationalizing it. Remember your Carlos Castaneda. Don Juan, was I a bird? I mean, what happened to my body? That's a stupid question. Well, you're saying I was a bird, so what happened to my body? Well, that's a stupid question. You don't have a body. You were a bird. You absolutely were a bird. Well, if I was a bird, what happened to my body? Did it turn into a bird? No, that's stupid. That's not what happened. You don't even have a body, dude. You are a bird now. A bird is what you were in that moment. And now you're a man again. Right? Those things don't exist outside of you. They exist inside you. So there is no jumping universes. That's just a way to explain it so you don't go crazy. When you realize what's going on, I mean, really realize you got to hold on tight, because there's a very real feeling, almost a scary feeling, like you're going to just... And the divine isn't trying to do that. The divine is incarnate because that is its will. This whole thing that these enlightenment schools teach you about achieving nirvana and ceasing incarnation, it's not what... Don't take that literally. That's a joke. That's literally a fucking joke that they tell, because the inside knowledge is different. Because they know that the average person wants to escape this dreary life, this painful life. And so they give you this whole, you can find enlightenment and stop incarnating. And you get ideas in your head like you're going to Buddhist heaven instead of Christian heaven. You get this idea that you literally die and don't come back. And that's the ad brochure. The reality of that, it's tongue in cheek. It's one of the reasons I love Zen and some of those traditions so much, because a lot of it's tongue-in-cheek double speak. It's like the initiated get the joke, and it's like some of them, you might even get mad. Because it's going to be like, you told me, well, no, I wasn't lying to you. It just, you inserted your own idea of what that means. When I say you're going to stop incarnating, that doesn't mean what you probably think it means. When you stop incarnating, it means you no longer believe that you're this. That's what it means. Doesn't mean you don't experience this. You might experience this a million more times. A billion more times, a trillion. In fact, I know you will. You are. You never stop. When you stop incarnating, simply means you know this isn't you. And I don't mean intellectually know it. You really know it. Gnostically know it. Every moment of your life. I'm not quite there yet, by the way. I get that way. I spend quite a lot of time in that, but I'm not that way all the time. I still got work to do there. I'm still integrating it. I still even have doubts from time to time. Full disclosure, there's times where I sit there and I'm feeling like shit and the world sucks. And I go, am I really God? You know? But those doubts, they get smashed because those doubts are intellectual. The knowledge transcends intellect. The knowledge is always there. It's only when my brain's being a stupid piece of shit that I forget. I allow myself to forget. I will myself. I'm not a victim of it. Part of the fun is dipping in and out of enlightenment too. That's fun. It's sort of like going to the movie theaters and watching a scary movie and knowing you can go like this and it goes away. All right. How much time we got? Yeah, I think I've been talking. Tonight flew by. How about you guys? Did tonight go by fast for you? Is this still 4:20 where you are? Give me a shout in the comments. How many people are still watching? Not that many, I bet. 32. We're up to the usual amount. Secrets keep themselves indeed. That's right, Ajna. Ajna knows what's up. Ajna, let me ask you real quick, because I know you're honest as shit, and you'll put me in my place if I'm completely off base. How similar are my, we'll call them teachings, to the stuff that you're familiar with from, what were they, ashrams or whatever that you went to? How similar, or how much? I'm sure that some of those masters would be rubbed the wrong way by my delivery, but are the things I'm saying, obviously you find value in them. You're here to listen and to interact, and I know you're here to have fun. It's not just about me. But how do I compare? Yes, I'm irreverent. Yes, I speak like a fucking savage about it. But I ask this because I don't know. On some level, I'm talking out my ass. On some level, to be brutally honest with you. I'm not making it up. This is literally what I've discovered, and sometimes it's validated by what I research, but I don't research as much as it sounds. You know, I'm not a, oh God, screw Sadhguru. I hate that guy sometimes. I really do. I don't want to hate the guy, but I really suspect he's a, I really suspect that he's a WF shill bag piece of shit. I really, he's fucking sus as fuck to me. Like, I don't trust his eyes. You know what I mean? I'd have to sit with him and talk to him to know for sure. I don't trust him. Oh, thank you, Ashna. That's good to know. I don't know if that's good to know or not, but I guess it's on point is good. Yeah. And I want to point out, Ajna, that it's not pure Advaita that I speak through, but Advaita is the one that I am the most comfortable speaking about. It is the closest one to my specific way of looking at things. Let me know, Ajna, the thing I'm talking about with the multiverse and shifting around, is that contained in the stuff that you were talked about? I know it's in there because when I look for it, it's there. It's definitely in Hindu philosophy, the idea of multiverses and shifting around, all that. But how different is what I'm describing? Obviously, it's more modern because I talk about like the modern cosmological physics side of it. But I'm wondering, you know, part of me is wondering whether I really need to reinvent the wheel with my book that I'm doing. Maybe I could just refer to something in Advaita and maybe just augment that instead of like rewriting the book. You know what I mean? So. Oh yeah, Ajna, there's nothing wrong with using dualistic stuff while acknowledging monism, because it looks dualistic from where we are, you know? So it's okay to work in the dualistic river, shall we say, but know that it, like, to have one foot in the dualistic and one foot in the monist is, I personally don't see anything wrong with that. Yes, I think it was the Vishnu. Yes, the Vishnu Puranas. Thank you. I'll have to look that up again. I'm gonna try to read that one because I want to see if my current theory called manifestationism, the way I'm organizing it, I want to see if I'm reinventing the wheel to the point where I should just rip that out and just use the like Vishnu Puranas. I might do that. I think that's right. I think that's the last time I looked it up, that sounds, I remember Vishnu. So almost certainly, as that's all about dreaming reality. It's almost exactly what I'm describing. And that's the thing, is that, you know, like I said, when I say I'm kind of riffing or what I say before, I don't think I said it was bullshitting, but this isn't coming from D.H. Thorne memorized or learned or studied under some tradition, is now regurgitating it. Almost somewhere around 80% of what I tell you guys is self-originating, that has been validated after the fact. So in other words, I come up with it, and then in my journeys and explorations, here's this teaching that's exactly like what I figured out. Oh, okay, that's good. I don't know. I have a very Western view of Advaita. Like I'm almost neo-Advaita, which I know is a little derogatory, at least to the traditionalists. So, you know, I don't know. That's why I ask, when people have experience with the authentic stuff, I like to know how I, as a mostly self-originating individual, are, because that tells me if I'm on the right. It doesn't tell me I'm right if they agree, but if they agree, then that's independent validation. But I don't like to pollute my mind with other people's ideas too much. I like getting like finger points in directions. Like Alan Watts was great for that, because he doesn't teach a specific philosophy. He's mostly Zen, but he's all over the map. When you listen to Alan Watts, he's all of it. That's why he's so great. And he doesn't try to indoctrinate you into one tradition, you know? So yeah, so a lot of that stuff, it wasn't like I memorized Alan Watts and just became that. But Alan Watts was fingers pointing from a lot of different directions at the same thing, and that's how it clicked. Because once I disobjectified, once I used my intellect to combust the illusion, once I opened my Shiva's third eye with intellect and said, this isn't fucking real, and I transcended for a moment, just that one moment was just whoa, like Matrix whoa, like Neo going whoa. It's exactly what it felt. A bit worse. I was crying hysterically. But the intellectual sophistication, that takes years to develop, especially on your own. And it does pay to sample, do not adopt other traditions. Sample them a little bit to get finger points. Don't adopt them whole cloth. I would not recommend someone adopt Advaita whole cloth, but as a path, Advaita is magnificent. You can focus on Advaita for years and get all of it, but don't become it. Use it as a finger pointing at the same thing everybody's pointing at, and you'll do good. Yes, Ajna, good point. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I'm turned off a little bit by the more, the Vedic side of it a little bit, because there is so much of that morality and purity game going on. And I think that's why I have a little bit of, appreciation for the Agori, because, you know, in a way I'm like a Western Agori in certain way, in certain senses. I wouldn't say it's the same thing, obviously, but yeah, good point. That's the thing. I'm not into the morality stuff. That's mostly societal side, you know. Okay, good to know, Ashley. Yeah, I mean, I'm into all of it, you know, and I think that by studying Greek and Western philosophy of a similar nature really blows the doors off of everything, because even though I would consider Advaita to be the most complete of the monist traditions, it's still, the Greek and Western monist traditions have a lot there that also illuminate things that Advaita and the Hindu traditions illuminate, but in the language of that culture. So when you study the Western stuff, there are things that click. In fact, what I find interesting was Parmenides. I think I'm saying his name wrong, but the guy before Socrates. Parmenides' philosophy is so close to mine that it's a little scary. It's not the same, but it's like the essence of non-dualism, or the essence of Neoplatonism. It's obvious that Plato, Socrates, and all those, it's obvious that they, or Socrates, I guess how you spell it, whatever how you supposed to say it. It's obvious that all of these things, once upon a time, were all interconnected with India, Egypt, Greece, all of these mystical cultures, probably, you know, Alexandria, for example. They were all once upon a time talking. I don't know how they did it. Maybe they all went to the same places and congregated. Maybe there was like letters. Maybe it was just the philosophers of these different cultures somehow spread through word of mouth. However it happened, it's so uncannily the same. There's only two ways it can happen. It's either a coincidence, like it arose mutually in these two different cultures because it's true, or they spread. And I know it's spread to some extent because the word chakra is the Greek word kakra. It's a borrowed word from Greek. This tells me that a lot of what the Indian tradition teaches might have been Greek philosophy applied to the Vedas. But that doesn't mean that it invalidates what is being said. It just means that, because the Vedas were the Vedas, right? Those things are old as shit. And the interpretation of it may have been updated with Greek philosophy, maybe, and adopted into like Shankara. But Shankara is like what, 400 AD? And the Greeks we're talking about are like 400, 500, 600 BC. So like 1,000 years between Parmenides and Shankara, but they almost sound the same. They do have common roots. Thank you, Ajahn. Yeah, they're both Proto-Indo-European, right? Exactly. Yep. And you just said it. Yep. So I do believe that all of this comes from that. They used to be called Aryans. It comes from that. I do believe it comes from a proto culture before 1200 BC. I think it comes from Atlantis, if I'm gonna be honest with you. I think these lofty monist non-dual traditions, what today is Neoplatonism, Hermeticism, Kabbalah, Advaita, you know, the Hindu traditions, Taoism, Zen, all of them are just reinterpretations of the essence that came from that Atlantean or Lemurian culture or something, you know? Ah, good. Okay, good. I didn't know that about Shankara. That sounds about right, because Buddhism came first. Yeah. Because the Buddhist tradition was ancient as fuck, and it was based on philosophy ancient as fuck that was very non-dual in its nature. So it's not like Shankara didn't invent non-dualism. I don't believe that, obviously. Like, I know my history well enough to know that Shankara basically just wrote it down. You know, he put it into writing, he organized it. He kind of did like what whatchamacallit, He sort of did like what Plotinus did, because he was teaching and someone was like, here, write this down. He's like, okay, So, I mean, what he spoke of was already thousands of years old before he spoke of it, before he wrote of it. So, yeah, the Aryan, and it pays to say it the way they would have said it, because if you say Aryan, that sounds like, bad guys from World War II. If you say Aryan, if you understand what that is, it's the people of the time of Aries. It has a lot to do with Ares, the god of war, the red, the eagle, the warriors. Yeah. But they had a very well-developed spiritual tradition. And I believe it comes from Atlantis myself. Whatever Atlantis was. When I say Atlantis, I don't necessarily mean Atlantis. I think Atlantis was the city, like Washington, D.C. is a city. But Atlantis was probably a big empire that wasn't called Atlantis. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was, but I don't know what it was called. But that's where I think it comes from, personally. I mean, this is why, the Indian lore is that their tradition's 80,000 years old or whatever, because it probably close to is. It probably is. It probably roots back into the time of Atlantis at least 20, 30, 40,000 years ago, at least. It's probably fucking aliens, guys. But when it's aliens, I mean, it's us as aliens. It's probably something you can't even imagine. It's probably, part of what fucks us up is they've got us so fucked up with this materialist mindset that for all we know, everything that we assume about aliens and space is wrong. It could just be a fucking projection. For all we know, there are no stars out there. Those are just our star, but the other versions of it. In other words, what if every star you see in the sky is just our star, but instead of a multiverse, it's just what our star looks like over there? I'm not saying that's what it is, by the way. I don't think that. It's just a thought experiment. Just think about it. Play with that with your mind and imagine it for a minute and see where that thought takes you. Not that it's real, but see where that open-minded thought takes you and wonder about it. What if every person you see is yourself, just in a different, that's kind of non-duality, right? That's just another way of looking at it. So we hear this stuff and we have been trained to believe in the Aristotelian materialistic view of reality. We have been taught to reject the Platonic idealist view. Instead, it should be neither one. In other words, you shouldn't take one or the other. Both need to be integrated to transcend. If you treat the material world as just an illusion that's just imaginary, you're crazy. If you treat the material world as bumping particles that are real and the ideal isn't real, you're equally crazy. You have to bring them together and lose both. You have to think of it like a coin, right? There's a head and a tails, but they're both the same silver. This is a traditional argument. The material world is the one side of the coin, and the astral, the ideal, is the other side. But they're really the same coin, just two different ways of seeing the same thing. Interesting theory, Tommy, maybe. He says the aliens were Japanese prisoners of war, not aliens. Maybe. I will say, I find it hard to believe that we went from literally horses and wagons and oil lamps in cities to, people like Elon Musk shooting rockets at the moon, so my thing with the aliens is I am a soft skeptic when it comes to the alien thing. I'm like, I think aliens are us. I think that they're either interdimensional us's or they're the breakaway species of human that, existed during Atlantis. Because what I think happened was, I think that human beings are not a single line of animals that evolve. It's just my personal thinking. I don't know if this is true. But my personal thinking is that human beings are a hybrid species. Like modern humans are a hybrid. And human beings, other humans existed that were not Homo sapiens or Cro-Magnon. I think we know that there was Neanderthal, Denisovan, but instead of thinking of them all having the same ancestor, I think that these different human groups come from related, but if they do have an ancestor that's united, it's so far back that you wouldn't even call it human anymore. It's like, they say Lucy and all that. Okay, fine. But modern humans are a hybrid of several different ones. And I think there was probably one that was more advanced mentally than us. Now, this is where you get off into some like no stuff. Like you kind of have to open the Pandora's box of the bad guys of World War II because they were into this idea and they based a lot of their white supremacy bullshit on it. Or at least that's what we're told. I wasn't alive then. I wasn't a German. I don't know. I can only go by what I'm told. But their esoteric, the Vril Society and all these other things, they had some weird ideas, guys, that they don't talk about, even on the History Channel very much. You have to go into like Robert Seffer and the conspiracy theory shit to get that stuff. And I'm not saying I believe this. I'm just telling you what I've heard. There is the idea that there was a race of people that today are referred to as the Nordic aliens, right? That's sort of what they think they might have been. That were a human species that wasn't Denisovan, probably wasn't Cro-Magnon, though it might have been. Wasn't Neanderthal, wasn't any of the other ones, although those three are like the main three that we know about. It might not have been any of those. Cro-Magnon might be a hybrid between them and the others. So I don't know this. This is, like I said, this is all like hypothetical shit because I don't have the anthropological chops to know for sure. I don't know. I know that the official narrative of history is wrong. I know it in my bones. I can't prove it, but I know it's wrong. I know that sounds crazy, and that's why I say it that way. I can't prove it. I wouldn't try. But I believe the Uncharted X, Grandel Carlson, and Bright Insight, and what's his name, Russell, idea. But I don't put too much stock in the idea that it's ancient aliens coming to Earth. I'm not saying that that's impossible. I'm saying I don't think so. It doesn't feel right. It's possible, but something's off. Maybe they were aliens from our solar system. Maybe they came from Mars originally. Maybe they came from local and they, uplifted us because their planet died or something. That's in a lot of the lore too. In the far out lore. The problem is that like some of this stuff sort of begs incredulity because what we know about science for sure, again, assuming we're not being lied to, stretches credibility a little bit. It sounds too good to be true, right? It's too on the nose, you know what I mean? But I saw this one thing today that was kind of wild. This scientist from way back, I forget when, it was like in the 40s or 50s. He had pointed out, because he took all the UFO sightings and did this mapping of it and said that the UFOs are almost certainly satellites that have been sent here from a central probe that's out in the solar system because they have a trajectory that looks like it would look like if they were being sent here and coming into orbit and leaving and all. So I don't know the whole thing. I'm just telling you what I heard. Kind of wild, maybe. Advice on working with fairies. The little winged creatures are probably not what they are. They're probably the ancestors of that culture, the Fae folk. When you look at it that way, it makes a little bit more sense. But maybe it is literal little winged creatures. I've never worked with fairies, so I don't know. you're not really supposed to talk about them. So I probably fucked myself just by saying that. Yeah, maybe it's some other ship, CJ. I don't know. Like, that's the thing. One of the theories I heard was that these ancient humans were so advanced that they had spaceships. That's what the Vimanas were. Maybe. And that they had already left our planet and were exploring the cosmos when the tragedy hit that destroyed Atlantis. And then they came back. They don't have settled planet. Well, maybe they do now. But at the time, they were just like scouts going around the solar system or the universe. And the Earth got clobbered by the Taurid meteor, whatever that meteor was called. It was was it Enki? I think it was Enki. Literally, like the same, like almost the same name as the god. Clobbered us, giving us Halloween. Quite literally, look it up. It's crazy. Clobbered us, ending the Younger Dryas or causing the Younger Dryas, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's us coming back, going ah. And they've been trying to uplift us ever since, sending down the 7 Abkalu and the 7, it's always 7 and it's always a guy with a bag and he's always like got fish or scales or feathers. It's always the same story. It's weird. And no matter where you go on the planet, the same guy keeps appearing, the same group of people, kind of keep appearing, and they give us technology and civilization and everything else. Pretty wild. But Robert Seffer is okay. I don't know if he's right. He might be wrong about everything. I like Randall Carlson. I like Graham Hancock. I like Uncharted X. I like Bright Insight. And I'm okay with Billy Carlson. But he gives me a bit of my spidey sense tingles with him. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know what it is with him. He's a little bit like an Alex Jones type anyway. So I don't want to speak bad about the guy because he might be sincere. And if he's sincere, all I can say is he might be wrong. I can't hate the guy. So he feels sincere on most levels. When he's not sincere, I can usually tell, and he's usually quite sincere, and he's very self-assured in what he says. So I'm kind of, on the one hand, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but when he reviewed, like, his big book is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, but not the Hermetica. It's the one that crazy guy from the 20s or whatever wrote. He claimed that he was literally given them by the gods or something. He like made some shit up, but apparently they're good. I don't know. I don't buy it. Like my bullshit-ometer goes off when I hear about that guy and the tablets. It sounds exactly like a recreation of the story of the Book of Mormon, It's like almost the same story. This guy finds this shit, only he can translate it, and then he put him back. They're back in it. It's like ridiculous. It's like I don't buy it. But I'd have to one of these days I'll have to like suck up my own, doubt, just kind of eat it for a minute. Yeah, William Walker Atkinson, exactly. I don't believe him, but I haven't read them deep enough to really judge them. I heard the story of how he claims they came to be, and my bullshit-ometer went off, and I said, yeah, maybe he's got a lot of wisdom in there, and maybe some of it's hermetic, and maybe, but it's too much bullshit for me to penetrate and give it the time of day until I got nothing better to do. You know what I mean? So. Who's that, Z? Who says the same stuff? I know I do. I know you're not talking about me, but is that who says the same stuff? Ah, CJ, I'm going to smack hug you. You know what a smack hug is, right? It's like, whoosh. That's fucking funny, man. That's so funny that we both had the same joke in mind, me and CJ. That's so great. Michael Sarian. Okay, I'll have to look him up, Tommy. What's he talk about? Does he talk about ancient aliens and shit? Like, what's he talking about? Oh, Billy Carlson. Okay, yeah. I had a feeling you were probably talking about Billy Carlson, but CJ made that funny because I made the same joke. Yeah, he says a lot of the same stuff over and over. That doesn't mean he's wrong. It just means that, you know, there are times he's dead on balls, and there's times where I don't know. Who's this guy I've been watching lately? He calls everybody deep divers. What's his fucking name? I can't think of his name. You know, he speaks like a preacher, which is part of what makes it work, you know. But he's kind of cool too. You feel that kundalini. I don't want to feel your kundalini. That's nasty. Keep that to yourself. It's supposed to go out of your head. Ralph Smart, that might be him. Yeah, that sounds right. Ralph Smart. I love when he starts to show, he says, breathe in that good ass prana. I don't know. But I'm going to have Wyatt give me a timer if he's still here. Yeah, it's Ralph Smart. I don't know. I'm sure I have only watched 2 of his videos, so I don't know if he seems right on the money in some, I mean, he's very new agey, and I kind of look down on that in some levels. He's not an occultist. He's not a deep, but I don't think he's wrong. Yeah, Infinite Waters. You don't like him? Okay, I'll have to look. I will have to keep him, you know. When I say I like him, I mean, I like his personality, even though it's a little far, you know what I mean? And I like his positivity, but there is such a thing as toxic positivity, you know? So. Let's see, it looks like Tommy is responding to the Saurian things. He does your own conclusions and not to believe what. Yeah, I do appreciate. That's why I like Uncharted X. Although Uncharted X, I really like him because he stays as rational as he can, but he, like all the other ones, they are trying to assert something. But what I like about Uncharted X is he's not asserting as much as he's questioning. In some ways, that makes him superior to Graham Hancock and even, you know, Randall Carlson and Bright Insight, because Uncharted X is not trying to assert anything other than the criticism of the official story. He has his own pet ideas, but he's very careful to separate what he thinks is versus what he knows is wrong. And that's why I think Uncharted X, in some ways, he should be, instead of Graham Hancock or Randall Carlson, in some ways, Uncharted X should be the tip of the spear. Because I think he's doing it the most responsibly, at least of the ones I watch. And he seems to be doing it the most responsibly because he's really going after things that really, really are difficult for the establishment to, you know, get around. He even says that doesn't mean that it was ancient aliens or something, but it really seems like they're wrong. And that's enough for me, you know, because they resist the idea that they're wrong so much, it tells me that they know they're wrong. Does that make sense? Like, me thinks they protest too much. So therefore, I do not trust them. So, all right. I am going to be ending the chat now. I want to thank everybody for tonight. Oh, Uncharted X. I'll put it like this. Uncharted X. Like that. I forget his name. He's Australian. He's kind of heavy set, got a ponytail, although you can't tell most of the time because the way he turns his head. But I love his content. Love it. He kind of gets to be a broken record lately, though, because he doesn't have a chance to do as much search, you know, visits to Egypt as he was doing. But some of the stuff that, like, dude, they go into a chamber and they show the resonance in these places. Tune to F sharp. If you know why that's important, you know. Like, that's something. You go into like these Egyptian things, and there's these, you know, those doorways that go nowhere because they're just dude, the fucking stargates of meditative when you have vibrations hitting you. They've done studies where they know if they use low frequency sound waves, They can penetrate your skull, hit your hippocampus, make you remember shit uncontrollably. You can fuck with your brain with vibrations. If you're sitting there going, in the right chamber and that shit's resonating, wom, wom. It seems like the ancients knew something about sound and vibration that we don't. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go because it's late and I want to enjoy my night. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for all the super chats. I should be here next week, same time, different topic. If I can close on this, though, it's a warning. If you have the means, while you still can, I'm not saying something's happening this year. I'm not saying it's happening this week or next year, but we are getting close to a point where I will be surprised if there is not some sort of societal crisis very soon that you're going to probably wish that you had a fallback option of stored food and other things. Imagine COVID's coming back, except it'll be economic or something with, there'll still be riots and all that. I anticipate economic, and it will be at least equal to COVID potentially. I'm not saying it's a definite, but to me, it's more a matter of when, not if. That doesn't mean there's no if, it just means it's mostly when. When is it going to happen is my biggest question. Be prepared. Ammo wouldn't hurt either, right? No, it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it's going to get like shit hit the fan, Book of Eli, Mad Max. No, I think it's going to be like COVID was. I think we're going to have a major, because they don't want to cause that much chaos. They want just enough chaos so that the Western world signs on to CBD. CDBC. They want to get everybody onto digital currency. And to do that, they have to pull the bottom out of the economy, cause a crisis for a couple months where people are starving, maybe people die. July, maybe. Yes, Patchy, I've heard a lot of that myself. A lot of people are saying by July. I'm crossing my fingers and it doesn't happen, but in some ways it would be good if it did, because that would mean that we're closer to when the good guys activate and say enough is enough. So, don't call me an accelerationist, but accelerate. Maybe that's what we need to do. So they may do it because they may figure they're not going to get America, but they at least want to get, so they figure by doing this, they may implode America's economy and then get the rest of the West on the central digital banking currencies. Maybe America will be fine in the long term, but in the moment, have at least 1 to 2 months, preferably more, of stored food so that you don't have to get on a bread line unless you really have to. You do not want to have to go for help from the government during this, because they're going to fuck you. And if they don't fuck you, it's still dangerous because you're going to be around a lot of other desperate people. So you want to have, it's not because you're going to die if you don't. I don't think it's going to get to that. I think it's going to be a real big societal crisis. Some people will die, but it's not going to be like Mad Max, but it will be like the lockdowns on COVID were, except it won't be so much lockdowns. It'll be more like they do lockdowns to keep the peace, because there's going to be so much rioting and people are going to be hungry and there's going to be bread lines and all kinds of shit. And a lot of people are going to be mad because their life savings are going to go away. At least temporarily. It may come back. The intention may be to restore it, but you don't want to have to go for help. If you have a month or two of stored food, I think personally that'll be enough. Because if it's longer than that, literally it's going to go to hell. I don't think that's the case though, because they want controlled collapse. They want to maintain control of the collapse. They want to control this demolition. They don't want a complete, utter chaos demolition. So they want to implode the currency. They want to cause all this shit, but they're not going to make it sit in stagnation longer than they have to get the other thing online. So for potentially a couple of months, it's going to be bad. It might even be a year that it's bad, but if you can hold out for a month or two, they will have stabilized enough of the system so that you shouldn't need stored food after a month or two. I'm being a little conservative here. Some people would say that's not enough. Some people are going to say 6 months to a year. I'm not saying that's wrong. If you've got the means, do that. But if you don't, if you're like me, 1 or 2 months probably enough. Okay. And don't think you're going to just make a fucking victory garden and get through it with all this shit. Most of you wouldn't. I don't know. And I work in the field. You don't know how to set up a garden to feed your family, let alone can it. You don't have livestock. You don't have goats or chickens. At a minimum, you need those to really make it work. You need goats, chickens, maybe ducks, shit like that, pheasants, whatever. So you need goats, chickens, and you need a decent acres worth of plowed, tilled soil. And chances are you need fertilizer because you probably don't know how to do all the composting and shit. So you're going to need heavy duty fertilizer, and that may be hard to get. So don't think you're going to homestead in your little half acre, backyard, guys. Don't even think. Don't think that's going to work. Go buy your storable foods while you can. I'm not going to name specific, but there's plenty you can go to that have very affordable. Yes, it's garbage food. You don't want to live on it, but it'll keep you alive. And you can even, have a little bit extra to give to people if you want. Just be careful who you tell, and have a little something to protect you just in case. And if you live in a city, if you live like Jen does in a bad part of town, have an exit strategy where you have your supplies somewhere else, the majority of it, because you don't want to be stuck. And yes, maybe it won't happen, but I've reached the point where I'm not saying maybe this is going to happen. I'm saying maybe it won't. Okay. So it's more a matter of when now than if for me. It's like 80% probable that it's going to happen sometime between now and 25. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later, but we'll see. Because I have intuition. I have the ability to remote, but I'm not that good. There's people much better who probably know exactly when shit's coming out. So just hold on. Yes, this is the first closing, Z. Thank you. All right, guys. I will see you guys next week. I do that. That's my ADHD, by the way. Good night, guys.